The long-range sensor array of Deep Space Nine registered the anomaly at stardate 47457.1, 0900 hours station time. The subspace distortion manifested in the Denorios belt, approximately 47 million kilometers from Bajor, generating a gravimetric shear reading of 17,000 Cochranes, 4 times the threshold for stable wormhole formation. Unlike the Bajoran wormhole's characteristic verteron emissions, this breach emitted exotic particles across multiple dimensional frequencies, chronoton radiation at 2.7 terahertz, morphogenic energy signatures, and an unidentifiable biogenic resonance pattern that defied standard tricorder classification. Commander Benjamin Sisko ordered immediate sensor focus on the phenomenon. What the sensors revealed violated 3 fundamental principles of established physics. 2 humanoid biosignatures emerged from the collapsing dimensional interface, both generating their own gravitational fields independent of the surrounding space-time. The first signature measured as a female humanoid, approximately 1.83 meters in height, emitting a bioelectric field of 847 megajoules, equivalent to a Type 4 phaser bank at full discharge. Her molecular structure registered as baseline human DNA, with anomalous cellular density readings suggesting a mass 57% greater than her volume should permit. The sensors classified her as an impossibility, a biological organism generating its own propulsion field while moving at Mach 4.3 through hard vacuum without environmental protection. The second signature defied even preliminary classification. Morphogenic scanners identified a humanoid form, standing 2.1 meters tall. But the entity's molecular structure fluctuated across 17 different states of matter simultaneously. Energy readings spiked at 3.4 terawatts, comparable to a Galaxy-class starship's warp core at maximum output. The entity radiated aggression across the psionic spectrum, triggering proximity alerts in DS9's Betazoid counseling staff from 47 million kilometers away. The 2 entities were engaged in combat. Recorded sensor logs captured the engagement in unprecedented detail. The female humanoid maneuvered through 3-dimensional space with precision that suggested either gravitational manipulation or localized subspace field generation. She wielded 3 artifacts that registered across multiple sensor spectrums: a metallic rope generating a quantum entanglement field, twin metallic bracers emitting a dampening field capable of deflecting directed energy weapons, and an edged weapon composed of an unidentifiable alloy that registered simultaneously as solid matter and pure energy. The male entity employed no technology. It generated directed plasma bursts through unknown mechanisms, created localized gravity wells that bent light, and demonstrated the ability to phase through solid matter. When the female humanoid's blade connected with the entity's physical form, the resulting energy discharge registered on DS9's sensors as a 4.7 magnitude subspace tremor. Commander Sisko transmitted emergency priority 1 signals to Starfleet Command and ordered DS9's shields raised to maximum. The combatants were moving toward Bajoran shipping lanes. The USS Enterprise D, under Captain Jean-Luc Picard, received the distress signal while conducting archaeological surveys in the Valo system, 4.3 light-years distant. Picard ordered immediate course change, maximum warp. At warp 9.6, the Enterprise arrived in the Bajoran sector within 47 minutes. By then, the situation had escalated. The male entity had diverted course toward Bajor itself, pursued by the female humanoid. 3 Bajoran cargo vessels, the Terrakov, the Andros, and the Prophet's Light, evacuated their courses as the combatants' energy signatures disrupted their navigational systems. The Terrakov suffered a warp core containment failure when caught in the periphery of a gravimetric shockwave. 237 Bajoran civilians faced imminent core breach, with evacuation impossible in the 45 seconds before catastrophic failure. The female humanoid disengaged from combat. Sensor logs recorded her trajectory change as instantaneous, a 90-degree vector alteration at Mach 4.3 with no deceleration curve, suggesting either inertial dampening beyond Federation capability or immunity to relativistic physics. She reached the Terrakoff in 8.2 seconds, phasing through the hull without triggering structural alerts. Internal sensors captured her image. A woman in armor styled after ancient Earth Mediterranean cultures, with dark hair and a circlet bearing a star emblem. She emerged 16 seconds later, carrying the Terrakoff's warp core. The core massed 12.7 metric tons. She carried it as a human might carry a child. Her biogenic energy field containing the antimatter reaction through mechanisms that made Chief Engineer Geordie LaForge's subsequent analysis report read like metaphysics rather than engineering. She transported the core 847,000 kilometers from the nearest planetary body, released it into open space, and erected what sensor analysis later classified as a directed kinetic barrier. A localized force field that contained the explosion's force into a cone aimed away from all vessels and celestial bodies. The detonation registered at 4,200 terajoules. She remained at the epicenter, her biogenic field absorbing energy that should have vaporized anything composed of matter as humans understood it. She then returned to the Terrakoff, made 3 additional trips to evacuate injured crew members to DS-9's infirmary, and resumed pursuit of the male entity. Total elapsed time, 4 minutes, 18 seconds. The Enterprise arrived to find the combatants re-engaged near Bajor's 4th moon. Captain Picard opened hailing frequencies across all standard and emergency bands. The female humanoid responded immediately, her voice transmitted through an unknown mechanism that bypassed communications protocols to speak directly through the Enterprise's bridge speakers. I am Diana of Themyscira, daughter of Hippolyta, princess of the Amazons. The entity I pursue is Ares, god of war. He has fled his dimensional prison and seeks to amplify conflict in this realm. I apologize for any disruption, but I must contain him before he reaches your populated worlds. Commander William Riker's tactical analysis was immediate and unambiguous. Captain, she just prevented a disaster that would have killed 237 people, but her power readings are off the scale. If she's hostile, we have no conventional means of containment. Picard's response entered Starfleet Academy curriculum as a definitive example of first contact diplomacy under crisis conditions. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Diana of Themyscira, we appreciate your intervention on behalf of Bajoran civilians. However, you are engaging in military action within Federation-protected space. We must request your immediate cooperation with our authorities while we assess this situation. Diana's response was courteous but absolute. Captain Picard, I respect your authority in this realm, but Ares must be stopped. I will cooperate fully once he is contained. Until then, I ask your understanding and your trust. The male entity, Ares, manifested a corporeal form for the first time since the engagement began. He appeared as a humanoid male in archaic armor, standing aboard a spatial distortion that resembled Greek columns suspended in vacuum. His voice transmitted through the same unknown mechanism, resonating with harmonics that triggered involuntary fear responses in 73% of the Enterprise crew. Little princess, you cannot stop what is already in motion. These mortals war among themselves with such beautiful cruelty. The Cardassians, the Bajorans, the Maquis. I need only nurture what already grows. This quadrant will burn, and I shall feast upon the ashes of their noble federation. He vanished. Not through transporter technology. Sensors detected no annular confinement beam. No Heisenberg compensator signature. He simply ceased to exist in that location and existed elsewhere, his energy signature reappearing in the Badlands, 4.7 light-years away. Diana's expression, captured in the Enterprise's visual logs, showed neither fear nor uncertainty, only grim determination. He's heading toward Cardassia. If he reaches their military command structure, thousands will die. Millions if he successfully amplifies their aggression toward Bajor. Picard made a decision that would trigger 17 separate Starfleet command inquiries, 4 Federation Council debates, and a complete revision of first contact protocols. Lieutenant Commander Data, set course for the Badlands, maximum warp. Diana of Themyscira, I am extending you temporary guest status aboard this vessel. We will discuss the parameters of your pursuit en route. You have my word that we will work together to contain this threat, but you must agree to abide by our laws and protocols. Diana descended toward the Enterprise's hull, her trajectory suggesting she intended to enter through the shuttle bay. She paused, hovering in vacuum, and addressed Picard with words that would echo through Starfleet JAG proceedings for years. Captain, I am a diplomat and an ambassador. I will honor your laws where they do not conflict with my sacred duty to protect the innocent. But understand this, I have lived for 3,000 years. I have witnessed empires rise and fall. I have seen what happens when good people prioritize procedure over protection. If it comes to a choice between your prime directive and preventing genocide, I will choose compassion over policy. Every time. The Enterprise's shuttle bay doors opened. Diana entered without further ceremony. In his ready room, Captain Picard activated the encrypted channel to Starfleet Command and began the message that would reach Admiral Alina Nechayev within the hour. We have encountered a situation that defies conventional first contact parameters. Recommend immediate consultation with Temporal Investigations, Cultural Analysis Division, and the Federation Metaphysics Research Initiative. We may have just made contact with an ancient Earth deity, and she appears to be on our side. The emergency session of Starfleet Command convened at Stardate 47459.3, 0300 hours Greenwich Mean Time via secure subspace link. 19 admirals, 4 Federation Council representatives, 3 Judge Advocate General officers, and 2 Temporal Investigation Specialists materialized holographically in the command briefing room at Starfleet Headquarters, San Francisco. The subject, containment protocols for an entity designated Diana of Themyscira, threat classification pending. Admiral Alina Nechayev chaired the session. Her opening statement was unambiguous. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a metahuman with capabilities exceeding any known species in Federation records, claiming to be from ancient Earth, currently aboard one of our flagship vessels. She has already intervened in a civilian crisis without authorization. We need to determine whether she is a first contact situation, a temporal anomaly, or a clear and present danger to Federation security. Captain Picard attended via live feed from the Enterprise, which had established a holding pattern in Federation space near the Cardassian border. Diana stood beside him on the bridge, her willingness to submit to Federation inquiry evident in her posture, arms relaxed, no weapons visible, expression open. Counselor Deanna Troy's preliminary empathic assessment accompanied Picard's transmission. Subject exhibits no deception. Emotional baseline suggests profound sense of duty, concern for civilian welfare, and genuine desire to cooperate. However, her emotional commitment to protecting innocence is absolute, potentially inflexible. Admiral William Ross, commanding officer of Starbase 375, presented the first analysis. Our xenobiology team has reviewed the sensor data from her rescue of the Terrakoff. Diana's cellular structure demonstrates regenerative capabilities beyond anything in our medical database. Dr. Crusher's preliminary scans, conducted with Diana's full cooperation, show her cells operate at approximately 300% baseline human efficiency. Her muscular density, skeletal structure, and neurological processing all exceed human parameters by factors ranging from 50 to 200%. Dr. Beverly Crusher's medical report, transmitted from the Enterprise sickbay, provided unprecedented detail. Diana had submitted to full medical examination, answering questions with remarkable patience. Key findings: her aging process had effectively ceased at biological age 28. She demonstrated complete immunity to all Federation-known pathogens. Her reflexes operated at temporal scales, suggesting either time perception alteration or cognitive processing speeds, approaching early data-level efficiency. Most significantly, her cellular structure contained what Dr. Crusher classified as extra-dimensional binding energy, a force holding her molecules together that did not correspond to electromagnetic, strong nuclear, weak nuclear, or gravitational forces. She is held together by something that shouldn't exist according to our physics, Dr. Crusher concluded. And yet, she does exist. I recommend we approach this as first contact with a species whose fundamental biology operates on principles we don't yet understand. Admiral Nechayev was unconvinced. Doctor, this entity intervened in Federation space without authorization, engaged in military action against an unknown hostile, and demonstrated capabilities that could threaten planetary populations. The fact that she helped Bajoran civilians doesn't change the fact that she violated our territorial sovereignty. Commander Benjamin Sisko, attending from Deep Space Nine, offered a counter-argument rooted in immediate tactical reality. Admiral, with respect, Diana saved 237 Bajoran lives. My station's sensors tracked her movements during the Terakov crisis. She had multiple opportunities to cause harm or seize control of the situation for her own purposes. Instead, she acted purely in service of preservation of life, then immediately returned to pursuing the entity she identified as Ares. Her actions are consistent with someone trying to prevent a larger catastrophe, not with a hostile infiltrator. The debate intensified. Judge Advocate General Philippa Louvois introduced the legal complications. We face an unprecedented jurisdictional question. If Diana is, as she claims, from ancient Earth, does she fall under Federation law as a human citizen? Or is she an extra-dimensional entity with no legal standing? Furthermore, her intervention in the Terakov crisis, while morally commendable, technically violated the Prime Directive's prohibition against interference with natural cultural development. She saved lives, Picard interjected. Surely the Prime Directive allows for humanitarian intervention in imminent loss-of-life scenarios. Captain, Louvois responded, the Prime Directive is explicit. We do not intervene in the natural development of cultures, even when that development includes tragedy. Diana made a unilateral decision to override the consequences of the Terakov's warp core failure, a failure that resulted from their own engineering choices. By what authority did she substitute her judgment for the natural progression of events? The question hung in the subspace transmitted silence. Diana spoke for the first time during the session. Her voice carried 3 millennia of diplomatic experience. Admirals, counselors, I understand your concern. In my world, among my people, we faced similar debates. The Amazons were created by the gods to serve as ambassadors between the divine and the mortal, to protect humanity from threats they could not face alone. We struggled for centuries with the question, when is intervention just, and when is it tyranny? I cannot offer you an easy answer, but I can tell you this, I have stood by and watched innocents die because I was told not to interfere with natural development. I have seen empires fall because good people followed rules instead of their conscience. I will not make that mistake again. If respecting your laws means watching people die when I could save them, then I cannot, in good conscience, respect those laws. The response triggered immediate reactions across the conference. 3 admirals spoke simultaneously. Admiral Nechayev's voice cut through. Then you are confirming that you will not submit to Federation authority. No, Diana replied. I am confirming that I will prioritize life over law. In my experience, just laws exist to protect life. When they fail that purpose, they must be questioned. Admiral Ross leaned forward in his holographic projection. That philosophy could justify any action. Who determines when laws fail their purpose? You. That's the definition of vigilantism. Picard intervened. Admirals, I propose we are approaching this from the wrong framework. Diana is not a criminal to be detained or a weapon to be controlled. She is a potential ally with capabilities we desperately need, facing a threat she understands far better than we do. This entity, Ares, demonstrated abilities that our sensors could barely quantify. If Diana's assessment is correct and he intends to amplify the Cardassian-Bajoran conflict, we are facing a threat that could destabilize the entire sector. I recommend we grant Diana provisional diplomatic status, assign a Federation liaison to coordinate her actions with our strategic objectives, and focus on the immediate crisis rather than abstract legal debates. Admiral Nechayev's expression suggested she had anticipated this recommendation and prepared a response. Captain Picard, I appreciate your diplomatic instincts, but I cannot authorize a powered individual with no accountability to operate freely in Federation space. Diana of Themyscira, I am ordering your temporary detention aboard the Enterprise, pending a full investigation by Temporal Investigations and the Federation Security Council. You will submit to confinement in appropriate quarters, with security measures to be determined by Captain Picard. You will not engage in any further independent action without explicit Starfleet authorization. Captain, you will proceed to Starbase 375, where Diana will be transferred to a secure facility designed for high-risk containment. Diana's expression did not change. Admiral, I will agree to confinement aboard the Enterprise as a gesture of good faith. But I will not abandon my pursuit of Ares. If he strikes while I am imprisoned in your secure facility, the blood of his victims will be on all our hands. That is Starfleet's responsibility, not yours, Nechayev replied. Then Starfleet does not understand what they face, Diana said quietly. Ares is not a conventional threat. He is a god, an extra-dimensional entity that feeds on conflict and grows stronger as violence escalates. Your weapons, your ships, your entire strategic doctrine was built to fight physical enemies. Ares is an ideological force made manifest. Only those trained to confront divine powers can hope to contain him. I am one of the few mortals in existence with that training. Lieutenant Commander Data, who had been analyzing sensor readings throughout the conference, spoke with characteristic precision. Admiral Nechayev, I have completed a preliminary analysis of the entity designated Ares. His energy signature shares characteristics with non-corporeal species, such as the Organians and the Dowd, but with significant differences. Specifically, his energy field demonstrates what I can only describe as emotional resonance. It amplifies aggressive tendencies in biological organisms within a radius that expands proportionally to the level of conflict in the environment. Mathematically, if he were to position himself near a militarized population engaged in active hostilities, his influence could create a feedback loop, resulting in exponential escalation of violence. Are you suggesting he could trigger a war? Admiral Ross asked. I am suggesting, Data replied, that if he positions himself within Cardassian's Central Command during current tensions with Bajor, he could transform a manageable diplomatic crisis into total war within 72 hours. Diana's assessment appears to be accurate. The conference room absorbed this information in silence. Admiral Nechayev closed her eyes briefly, a tell that those who knew her recognized as profound frustration with an impossible situation. Captain Picard, I am modifying my orders. Diana of Themyscira is to be confined to guest quarters aboard the Enterprise, with security monitoring but not physical restraints. She is granted provisional status as a consulting expert on the Ares threat, but she is absolutely forbidden from taking independent military action. All activities must be coordinated through you. Lieutenant Commander Data and Counselor Troy are assigned as liaisons. Is this arrangement acceptable? Diana of Themyscira? Diana met Nechayev's gaze through the view screen. It is acceptable, Admiral, but I ask one thing in return. When Ares moves, and he will move, you must trust me to act quickly. Divine conflicts operate on timescales mortal institutions cannot match. Committees cannot fight gods. Then let us hope, Nechayev replied, that committees can work with those who can. The conference adjourned. Picard escorted Diana to guest quarters on Deck 8, spacious accommodations typically reserved for ambassadorial delegations. As they walked, passing crew members stared with poorly concealed fascination. Diana's armor, bronze and red, with the star emblem prominent on her circlet, marked her as profoundly other, even in a federation that prided itself on diversity. You handled that well, Picard observed. Most people faced with demands for detention respond less diplomatically. I've negotiated with gods, warlords, and kings, Captain, Diana replied. Your admirals are reasonable by comparison. They fear me because they don't understand me. That fear is rational. I would be concerned if they did not ask questions. They reached her quarters. Picard keyed the entry. Inside, the computer had attempted to accommodate what little it knew of Diana's cultural background. There were Greek-style pottery replicas, Mediterranean-inspired decor, and a selection of Earth literature from various eras. Diana smiled faintly at the effort. Your computer is thoughtful. We try, Picard said, then more seriously. Diana, I need to understand something. You said you've lived for 3,000 years, that you're from ancient Earth. How is that possible? Diana sat, her posture reflecting exhaustion that seemed more spiritual than physical. The short answer? Magic. The longer answer? I am the daughter of Queen Hippolyta of the Amazons, sculpted from clay and given life by the gods of Olympus. I was raised on Themyscira, an island hidden from the world of men, and trained to be a warrior and a champion. When I left my home to fight in what you would call World War I discovered that the gods' power in the mortal realm was fading. They retreated to their own dimension, and I remained to serve as their champion in the world I had come to love. And now you're here, Picard said, in our time. 3,000 years later. I do not age, Diana said simply. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have seen humanity at its best and worst. When Ares escaped his imprisonment and fled through a dimensional breach, I pursued him. I did not intend to arrive in your era, Captain, but the breach was unstable. It deposited me here in this time, in your Federation. And I find myself both awed and concerned by what I see. Concerned? Diana met his eyes. You have built something remarkable, Captain. A civilization dedicated to peace, to exploration, to the betterment of all. But you have also built laws that prioritize non-interference over intervention. I understand the wisdom in that. I truly do. But I have seen what happens when good people refuse to act. The galaxy is not peaceful, Captain. It is full of predators, and your prime directive assumes that all species deserve to develop without interference, even when that development includes atrocity. That is a philosophy I cannot fully embrace." Picard considered his response carefully. The prime directive is not about standing by while atrocities occur. It's about recognizing that we do not have the right to impose our values on others, no matter how noble those values may be. We have learned painfully that intervention, even well-meaning intervention, often causes more harm than it prevents. "And yet you intervene constantly," Diana observed. "You negotiate treaties, you evacuate refugees, you stand against tyrants when they threaten Federation space. Where is the line, Captain? When do you decide that intervention is just?" "That," Picard admitted, "is the question we struggle with every day." Outside, in the Badlands, Ares' energy signature intensified. Deep Space Nine's sensors detected increasing aggression in Cardassian communications traffic, and in her quarters, Diana of Themyscira waited, knowing that the philosophical debate would soon become brutally practical. The countdown to crisis had begun. At Stardate 47462.8, Lieutenant Commander Data completed what would become the most controversial archaeological analysis in Federation history. Working continuously for 63 hours, accessing 17 different historical databases, including the Federation Archaeological Council archives, the Daystrom Institute's anthropological records, and classified temporal investigations files, Data compiled a comprehensive correlation between Diana's stated origin and established Earth historical records. His findings required immediate escalation to Captain Picard and triggered an emergency consultation with the Department of Temporal Investigations. The briefing took place in the Enterprise's observation lounge. Present, Captain Picard, Commander Riker, Lieutenant Commander Data, Counselor Troy, Dr. Crusher, and Diana herself, who had requested to participate in any analysis concerning her origins. Two temporal investigations agents, Dulmer and Luxley, attended via secure subspace link, their expressions already conveying bureaucratic disapproval before Data spoke a word. Data began with characteristic precision. "Captain, I have completed cross-referencing Diana's biographical statements against Earth historical records. The correlations are statistically significant and deeply problematic from a temporal mechanics perspective." He activated the view screen. A map of the ancient Mediterranean appeared, dated approximately 1200 BCE, the Late Bronze Age, a period characterized by civilizational collapse, widespread warfare, and the mysterious disappearance of several advanced cultures. Diana stated she was born on Themyscira, an island hidden from the world of men. Historical records contain multiple references to legendary Amazon warrior cultures in this region and period. Greek mythology extensively documents the Amazons as a society of female warriors, often located in regions near the Black Sea or in isolated Mediterranean locations. Traditional scholarship has classified these references as myth. However, if Diana's testimony is accurate, these were not myths. They were historical accounts of an actual culture employing advanced isolation technology. Diana nodded. Themyscira was protected by divine magic, what you might classify as dimensional phasing technology. The island existed partially outside normal space-time, visible only to those the gods permitted to see it. It was not myth, Commander. It was simply hidden. Data continued. Diana also stated she participated in what we know as World War I, specifically engaging with forces in 1918. She mentioned fighting Ares during this conflict. Historical records from this period contain sporadic, unverified reports of extraordinary events. Unexplained explosions, accounts of a female combatant with unusual abilities operating in Belgium and France, and German intelligence documents describing Die Wunderwaffe Frau, the Wonder Weapon Woman. These reports were dismissed as wartime propaganda or hysteria. However, if Diana's presence is accepted as factual, these reports constitute historical evidence of her intervention. You're saying she's been documented in our history, Riker said, but nobody believed the documentation. Correct, Commander. And therein lies our temporal crisis. Data changed the display to show a complex timeline diagram. If Diana is, as she claims, a native of Earth's past who has lived continuously through human history, she is not an extra-dimensional visitor. She is a time-displaced individual who never left her original timeline. She has been present, in hiding or operating covertly, throughout the development of human civilization from approximately 1200 BCE to the present year of 2370. This makes her a temporal anomaly of unprecedented complexity. Agent Dulmer's voice cut through the briefing with the sharp precision of someone who had spent decades dealing with temporal violations. Commander Data, are you suggesting that Diana of Themyscira has been living in Earth's timeline for 3,000 years without triggering any temporal alerts or causality violations? I am not suggesting it, Agent Dulmer. I am confirming it based on cross-referenced evidence. Agent Luxley leaned forward, his expression suggesting he was calculating the paperwork this would generate. That's impossible. Our temporal monitoring systems would have detected a 3,000-year continuous temporal anomaly. Unless... He paused, the implications visibly dawning. Unless she's not an anomaly. Unless she's native to the timeline. Precisely, Data said. Diana is not a time traveler. She is an individual with extended lifespan who has existed continuously from the Bronze Age to the present. From a temporal mechanics perspective, she has not violated causality because she has never left her own timeline. She is, quite simply, very old. Dr. Crusher added her medical perspective. Data's analysis is consistent with my findings. Diana's cellular structure shows no evidence of temporal displacement stress, no chronometric particles, none of the biological markers we'd expect from someone who had traveled through time. She's aged, or rather, not aged, naturally. She's exactly what she claims to be, an immortal human from ancient Earth. Picard absorbed this, his archaeological training making him perhaps uniquely suited to appreciate the magnitude of the discovery. Data. If Diana has been present throughout human history, has she influenced that history? Has her presence altered the timeline we know? That, Data replied, is the critical question, Captain. And I cannot answer it definitively. If Diana has been living covertly, minimizing her intervention in human affairs, her presence may have had negligible historical impact. However, if she has intervened in significant events, then she's already changed history, Riker finished, and we're living in a timeline that includes her interventions. Diana spoke quietly. I have tried to minimize my impact. After leaving Themyscira, I learned quickly that obvious displays of power create more problems than they solve. I have lived under many names, in many places, always trying to help without revealing what I am. During the World Wars, I intervened where I could, but always carefully. I saved lives when possible, fought when necessary, and disappeared when the fighting ended. I am not a conqueror or a ruler. I am a guardian. But yes, I have influenced your history. Modestly, I hope, but I have influenced it. Agent Dulmer's frustration was palpable. This is a Level 1 temporal violation. The Temporal Prime Directive explicitly prohibits... With respect, Agent Dulmer, Picard interrupted, the Temporal Prime Directive prohibits time travelers from altering history. Diana has not traveled through time. She has lived through time. There is a profound difference. You cannot charge someone with violating temporal protocols simply for being old. Captain Picard, Luxley said, the Department of Temporal Investigations needs to conduct a full historical audit to determine whether Diana's presence has created timeline contamination. We need access to her complete biographical history, cross-referenced with every major historical event from 1200 BCE to present. This will require extensive interrogation and... No. Diana's voice carried absolute finality. I will not submit to interrogation about 3,000 years of my life, so your department can determine whether I have contaminated history. I am not a contaminant. I am a person who has lived an unusually long life, trying to do good in a complicated world. I will not apologize for existing. The confrontation reached an impasse until Counselor Troy offered a diplomatic resolution. Agents, perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly. Diana is not the cause of a temporal anomaly. She is the solution to a historical mystery. For centuries, scholars have debated whether the Amazons were real, whether certain ancient Greek legends had any historical basis. Diana's presence confirms that these legends were true. Rather than viewing her as a violation, perhaps we should view her as a primary historical source, a living witness to eras we've only studied through artifacts. Picard seized the opening. Counselor Troy is correct. Diana, would you be willing to provide historical testimony to the Federation Archaeological Council? Not as a subject of investigation, but as a consultant. Your knowledge of ancient Earth cultures could revolutionize our understanding of human history. Diana considered this. I would be willing, Captain. Though I warn you, many of your historical assumptions are incorrect. The Bronze Age collapse, for instance, was not caused primarily by environmental factors or invasions. It was caused by divine conflict, gods warring among themselves, with mortal civilizations as collateral damage. Ares was particularly active during that period. Much of what you classify as myth was simply history that involved powers you don't have frameworks to classify. Data's eyes brightened with scientific fascination. Diana, are you stating that the Greek gods were real entities? Are real entities, Commander? They still exist, in their own dimension. They have simply withdrawn from active involvement in human affairs. Mostly. She paused. Ari's current incursion suggests that some of them have grown restless with that arrangement. The view screen suddenly flared with an incoming priority signal. Lieutenant Worf's voice carried urgency. Captain, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the Cardassian border. Multiple reports of unusual aggression in Cardassian military communications. Central Command has ordered full mobilization of the Fourth Order along the Bajoran frontier. Picard stood immediately. On screen, the display showed sensor data from Deep Space Nine. Cardassian warship movements indicated a significant military buildup. 17 Galore-class warships, 3 Keldon-class battleships, and multiple support vessels moving into attack formation near the demilitarized zone. And at the center of the formation, barely visible through sensor interference, was an energy signature that matched Ares' dimensional profile. Diana rose from her seat, her hand moving reflexively to her hip, where her sword would normally rest. But Picard had required her to leave her weapons in her quarters as a condition of attending the briefing. He's positioned himself exactly where I feared. Cardassian Central Command is aggressive by nature, militaristic by culture. Ares doesn't need to control them. He just needs to amplify what's already there. Captain, you must let me intercept him before... The communication from DS9 updated. Commander Sisko's face appeared, his expression grim. Enterprise, we have a crisis. The Cardassian Fourth Order has just received orders to conduct preemptive defensive operations against Bajoran colonies. They're claiming intelligence indicates an imminent Bajoran attack. It's completely fabricated. We've been monitoring Bajoran communications, and there is no attack planned. Something is influencing Cardassian command decisions. Ares, Diana said. He's feeding them paranoia, amplifying their worst instincts. Captain, within hours, they will convince themselves that attacking Bajor is rational self-defense. And once the shooting starts, Ares will feed on the conflict. He'll grow stronger, his influence will expand, and the violence will escalate beyond anyone's ability to contain it. We are running out of time. Picard made the decision that Admiral Nechayev would later describe as either brilliant tactical thinking or dangerous insubordination. Lieutenant Worf, set course for the Cardassian border, maximum warp. Diana, you are authorized to retrieve your equipment and prepare for tactical intervention. Commander Data, compile everything we know about Ares' energy signature and develop a theoretical containment protocol. Dr. Crusher, prepare sickbay for potential casualties. This situation could escalate rapidly. Agent Dulmer's voice cut through. Captain Picard, Diana is under investigation by temporal investigations. You cannot authorize her to engage in... Picard terminated the connection. Captain, Riker said quietly, that's not going to go over well with Starfleet Command. Commander, Picard replied, if we allow a god to start a war because we were too concerned with proper procedure, we'll have far more to answer for than a terminated subspace call. Diana, how do we fight Ares? Diana was already moving toward the door. You don't, Captain. Your weapons can't touch him. Only divine weapons forged in godly fires can harm an Olympian. But I can fight him. And if you can disrupt his energy signature enough to weaken his connection to this dimension, I can force him back into imprisonment. How do we disrupt an extra-dimensional entity? Data asked. Diana paused. I don't know your technology well enough to answer that, Commander. But I know divine power. Ares feeds on conflict, on emotion, on the worship of violence. If you can create a localized area of absolute emotional neutrality, no fear, no anger, no aggression, he will be weakened. In my time, temples to Athena, goddess of wisdom, were built with architectural principles designed to induce calm. Perhaps your technology has similar capabilities, Counselor Troy spoke up. We have psionic dampening fields designed to protect telepaths from overwhelming emotional input. If we could recalibrate one to project emotional stabilization rather than simple dampening. Make it so, Picard ordered. Data, work with Counselor Troy on the technical specifications. Diana, you have 30 minutes to prepare. Then we're going to prevent a war. In her quarters, Diana donned her armor, not the ceremonial dress she had worn during the briefing, but her combat gear, the God-Killer sword, forged on Themyscira from divine metals, the lasso of truth, woven from the golden girdle of Gaia, the bracelets of submission, gifts from Athena, capable of deflecting energy at relativistic speeds. She had worn this armor in the trenches of World War I, in countless hidden conflicts throughout the 20th century, in battles against forces that humanity never knew threatened them. Now she would wear it again, in a future she had never imagined, alongside allies she had just met. As the Enterprise went to red alert and accelerated toward the Cardassian border, Diana stood at the viewport in her quarters, watching the stars streak past at velocities that would have seemed like magic to the people of ancient Themyscira. Athena, she whispered to the goddess who might or might not hear her prayers across dimensional barriers, guide my hand, grant me wisdom alongside strength, and if I fall in this place, in this time, let it be in service of the innocent. The stars offered no answer, but then they never had. The Enterprise reached the Cardassian border at stardate 4 Samsemum 466.2, entering a tactical situation that had deteriorated far faster than even pessimistic projections anticipated. 17 Galore-class warships had formed an attack perimeter around 3 Bajoran colony worlds, Valo II, Valo III, and Free Haven. The Cardassian Fourth Order, under Gul Evek, had transmitted an ultimatum to the colonies: surrender for protective custody within 2 hours, or face military pacification. The Federation's diplomatic response was immediate. Ambassador Talar of Vulcan, stationed at Starbase 375, had opened emergency negotiations with Cardassian Central Command, offering Federation mediation, economic concessions, and security guarantees. Every offer was rejected within minutes of transmission, often with language that Cardassian diplomacy typically avoided. Phrases like final reckoning, cleansing fire, and blood debt. Linguistic analysis suggested the responses were being influenced, the word choices reflecting aggression levels atypical of Cardassian strategic communication. Commander Sisko's assessment from DS9 was unambiguous. This isn't normal Cardassian behavior. They're aggressive, yes, militaristic, absolutely, but they're also pragmatic. They don't launch invasions against Federation-protected colonies without calculating cost-benefit analysis. Someone or something has bypassed their rational decision-making processes. Diana, standing beside Captain Picard on the Enterprise bridge, confirmed Sisko's analysis. Ares doesn't possess people like a telepath. He amplifies what's already there: the anger, the fear, the desire for dominance. He finds the darkest part of a culture's psychology and makes it seem rational, necessary, even noble. To the Cardassians right now, attacking these colonies feels like self-defense. They genuinely believe they have no choice. "Can we disrupt his influence?" Picard asked. "Remove him from the Cardassian command structure." "If I can reach him physically, yes, but he's manifesting inside Cardassian Central Command on Cardassia Prime. That's deep inside their territory, surrounded by military installations. Your Federation and the Cardassian Union aren't exactly exchanging friendly visits." Lieutenant Commander Data, working at an auxiliary science station, looked up from his calculations. "Captain, I have been analyzing Ari's energy signature across multiple frequencies. His dimensional presence operates through what I can only describe as emotional resonance networks. He is not physically present in the conventional sense. He is projecting his influence through the aggressive impulses of individuals within range. The more aggression present, the stronger his manifestation becomes. It creates a feedback loop. His presence increases aggression, which strengthens his presence, which increases aggression further." "How do we break the loop?" Riker asked. "Theoretically, by creating conditions of emotional neutrality within his area of influence. Counselor Troy and I have developed a modified psionic dampening field that should, in theory, reduce emotional intensity within a localized area. However, the field requires tremendous power and has never been tested on an extra-dimensional entity of this magnitude." Diana studied the tactical display showing Cardassian fleet positions. "Commander, if you can create that field, I can use it to weaken Ares enough to force physical manifestation. Once he's corporeal, I can engage him directly. But I need to reach Cardassia Prime. Do you have any way to transport me into their command center without starting an interstellar incident?" Picard's expression suggested he was weighing options that all carried significant consequences. "Diana, even if we could transport you to Cardassia Prime, the moment you appear in their central command, every security system they have will target you. You'd be fighting their entire military while trying to confront Ares." "Captain," Diana said calmly, "I have infiltrated Nazi strongholds, Soviet military installations, and terrorist compounds that believe themselves impregnable. I have fought armies before. The question isn't whether I can survive, it's whether you can get me there and provide the technical support I need to weaken Ares. The conversation was interrupted by an incoming transmission from DS9. Cisco's face appeared on the view screen, his expression showing the strain of someone managing multiple crises simultaneously. Enterprise situation update. The Bajoran colonies have refused to surrender. They're evacuating civilians to underground shelters, but they don't have the defensive capabilities to withstand Cardassian bombardment. We have maybe 90 minutes before the ultimatum expires, and the Fourth Order opens fire. And there's another complication. The display shifted to show sensor readings from the Badlands. Multiple energy signatures, matching Ares' dimensional profile, were appearing throughout the region. Not copies of Ares, but extensions of his influence, nodes of his consciousness spreading across the sector. "He's expanding," Diana said, her voice tight with urgency. "He's no longer focusing his power on a single location. He's creating a network of influence, amplifying aggression across multiple populations simultaneously. Captain, if he succeeds in triggering the Cardassian assault, the violence will feed him. He'll grow strong enough to extend his reach across your entire quadrant. Every conflict, every war, every act of aggression will fuel him. He could plunge this entire region into decades of violence." "How do we stop something like that?" Picard asked. Diana met his eyes. "We don't let the first domino fall. We stop the Cardassian attack before it begins, and we stop Ares before he can amplify anything else." Admiral Nechaev's face suddenly appeared on a split-screen transmission, her expression suggesting she had been monitoring the situation and was about to issue orders Picard would not like. "Captain Picard, I've been briefed on the situation. Starfleet Command is dispatching the Seventh Fleet to the Cardassian border as a show of force. In the meantime, you are ordered to maintain defensive posture only. Under no circumstances are you to enter Cardassian space or engage their military forces. This situation requires diplomatic resolution, not military escalation." "Admiral," Picard said carefully, "diplomatic resolution requires rational actors on both sides. The Cardassians are not currently capable of rational negotiation. They are being influenced by an extra-dimensional entity that— Captain, I have read Diana's reports, I have reviewed Data's analysis, and I have consulted with the Federation Science Council. The consensus is that we are dealing with either an advanced telepathic species or a sophisticated psychological warfare program, not a god. I am not authorizing military action based on mythological explanations." Diana stepped forward, her presence commanding enough that even through subspace transmission, Admiral Nechaev's attention shifted to her. "Admiral, I understand your skepticism. You have built a civilization on reason and science. The idea of gods existing outside your physical laws seems impossible, but I have fought Ares across 3 millennia. I have seen him start wars, topple governments, and turn peace-loving people into killers. He is real, and he is here. If you do not act now, thousands will die, tens of thousands, perhaps more." Nechaev's expression softened slightly, not in agreement, but in what seemed like genuine respect for Diana's conviction. "Diana, I believe that you believe what you're saying. But Starfleet cannot base strategic decisions on faith. We need evidence, verifiable scientific evidence that this entity is what you claim it is." "Admiral," Data interjected, "I may be able to provide that evidence. If Captain Picard authorizes a reconnaissance mission to Cardassia Prime, I can deploy sensor probes calibrated to detect and record Ares' dimensional signature. The probes would provide objective data confirming or refuting Diana's hypothesis. However, deploying probes in Cardassian space would require either their permission, which they will not grant, or covert insertion, which violates Federation law. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. Picard was being forced to choose between obeying orders and potentially preventing a catastrophe. Diana broke the silence. "Captain, you don't need to violate your orders. I will go alone. I am not a member of Starfleet. I am not bound by your regulations. Give me a shuttlecraft, transport me to Cardassian space, and I will handle this myself. Your crew can maintain defensive posture while I confront Ares. If I succeed, the crisis ends. If I fail, you can honestly report that a non-Federation individual acted without authorization." "Absolutely not," Picard said immediately. "Diana, I appreciate the offer, but I will not send you into what amounts to a suicide mission simply to protect Starfleet from political consequences." "Then what do you suggest, Captain?" "We have," Diana glanced at the chronometer, 73 minutes before Cardassian warships begin bombarding civilian colonies. Your admiral has ordered you to stand down. Your regulations prohibit intervention, and Ares grows stronger with every passing minute. What is your plan?" Jean-Luc Picard had commanded starships for decades. He had faced Borg, Romulans, spatial anomalies, and political crises that would have paralyzed lesser officers. He had built a career on finding diplomatic solutions to impossible situations. But in this moment, looking at Diana's determined expression, at the tactical display showing Cardassian warships powering weapons, at the chronometer counting down to catastrophe, he realized that diplomacy had failed. Sometimes the only moral choice was to disobey immoral orders. "Commander Riker," Picard said quietly, "you are hereby relieved of duty for the next 2 hours. Please retire to your quarters." Riker understood immediately. If Picard was about to violate orders, he was doing it in a way that would protect his first officer from court-martial. "Sir, I must protest." "Your protest is noted, Commander. You are relieved." Riker left the bridge, his expression making clear he knew exactly what was happening and respected Picard for it. Picard turned to the view screen. "Admiral Nechayev, I am terminating this transmission. What happens next is my responsibility alone." He closed the channel before she could respond. Then he turned to Diana. "We have 72 minutes. Tell me exactly what you need." The plan required precision, speed, and a willingness to operate in the gray areas of Federation law that Starfleet officers typically avoided. Captain Picard, Lieutenant Commander Data, Chief Engineer LaForge, and Diana convened in the Enterprise's main briefing room for tactical planning. The chronometer displayed 68 minutes until the Cardassian ultimatum expired. Data presented the operational framework. "Captain, I have identified a viable approach. Cardassian Central Command maintains a network of remote listening posts throughout the demilitarized zone, ostensibly for monitoring treaty compliance, but functionally serving as intelligence gathering stations. One such station, designated Outpost Trivoli, is located 17 light-years from Cardassia Prime. It operates with a crew of 12, 8 military personnel, 4 intelligence operatives. If we can intercept communications from this outpost, we may gain access to current Cardassian strategic communications, including evidence of Ares' influence." "How do you propose we intercept a fortified Cardassian intelligence post?" Picard asked. Diana answered before Data could respond. "We don't intercept it, Captain. We capture it. I go in, neutralize the personnel non-lethally, and secure their communication systems. Commander Data accompanies me to extract the intelligence data. Total operation time, 11 minutes. Geordi LaForge looked up from his PIAD, his ocular implants adjusting as he processed Diana's proposed timeline. 11 minutes to assault a military installation, disable 12 trained operatives, and hack their computer systems. That's ambitious. "It's realistic," Diana replied. I have conducted similar operations dozens of times. The Cardassians will be monitoring for starship approach, not individual infiltration. If you can transport me within 200 meters of the installation, I can reach it before their sensors detect human biosigns. Once inside, I neutralize resistance while Commander Data accesses their systems. Data nodded. Diana's assessment is tactically sound. However, there is a significant complication. Cardassian computer systems employ biometric encryption. They require Cardassian retinal scans, DNA verification, and in some cases, telepathic authentication from Cardassian intelligence officers. Even with physical access, I cannot bypass these security measures remotely. Then we bring a Cardassian with us, Diana said simply. The room fell silent. Diana, Picard said carefully, are you suggesting we kidnap a Cardassian intelligence officer? I'm suggesting we temporarily detain one, extract the intelligence we need to save thousands of lives, and return them unharmed. Captain, I understand this violates your principles. But we are out of options and out of time. Sometimes principles must bend to necessity. Counselor Troy, who had been listening from the corner of the room, spoke up. There may be a less forceful approach. Diana, you mentioned you possess a lasso of truth. How exactly does it function? Diana lifted the golden rope coiled at her hip. She had been permitted to carry it as it registered as non-lethal on security scans, though the guards monitoring her had noted it seemed to pulse with faint energy. The lasso was forged from the golden girdle of Gaia, the Earth goddess. Anyone bound by it must speak truth. They cannot lie, cannot deceive, cannot withhold information. It compels absolute honesty. Troy's empathic senses immediately identified the implications. That's not simply lie detection, that's psychic compulsion. You're forcing someone to violate their own mental autonomy. Yes, Diana acknowledged without hesitation. The lasso is not a gentle tool, Counselor. It is a weapon against deception. I use it when lies cost lives. And right now, Cardassian intelligence officers are being influenced by Ares to pursue a catastrophic war. If compelling one of them to speak truth saves thousands, then I consider it moral necessity. Picard found himself in familiar philosophical territory, the choice between absolute principles and pragmatic salvation. Diana. The Federation has strict laws against psychic coercion. What you're describing would be classified as mental assault. Any intelligence gathered through such means would be inadmissible in Federation proceedings and would constitute a war crime under interstellar law. Captain, Diana said, her 3 millennia of experience evident in her tone, I am not gathering evidence for a trial. I am gathering intelligence to stop a war. There is a difference. You can charge me with whatever crimes you wish after we prevent thousands of deaths. I will accept those consequences. But I will not stand by and watch people die, because extracting the information needed to save them might be legally problematic. Data processed this exchange with his characteristic analytical precision. Captain, I must note that Diana raises a valid ethical distinction. Federation law prohibits psychic coercion primarily to protect individual rights and maintain legal due process. However, in military intelligence scenarios where time-sensitive information is required to prevent imminent mass casualties, Starfleet regulations permit certain enhanced interrogation protocols under General Order 12. While Diana's lasso does not fall under established protocols, its functional purpose, extracting actionable intelligence to prevent civilian deaths, aligns with the philosophical justification for General Order 12. Data, Picard said. Are you actually arguing in favor of magical psychic compulsion? I am arguing, Captain, that the ethical framework we employ to justify certain interrogation techniques should apply consistently regardless of whether the technique is technological or mystical. If we accept that preventing mass casualties justifies some degree of psychological pressure in interrogation, we must either accept Diana's lasso under similar circumstances or revise our position on General Order 12 entirely. Picard rubbed his temple. Counselor, your assessment? Troy considered carefully. The lasso is more invasive than anything we currently employ, but Diana is correct that the alternative, allowing Ares to trigger a war, would result in suffering on a vastly larger scale. If we proceed, I recommend strict limitations. The subject is bound only long enough to extract specific, necessary intelligence. No unnecessary questions, no humiliation. And the subject is treated with dignity throughout the process. Agreed, Diana said. I take no pleasure in compelling truth, Counselor. I use the lasso only when deception serves evil. This qualifies. The decision made, the team moved to execution planning. Chief O'Brien was brought into the operation. His transporter expertise would be critical for precision insertion and extraction. Lieutenant Worf provided tactical analysis of Cardassian security protocols. Within 20 minutes, they had a workable plan. The target, Gul Meket, commander of Outpost Trivoli, a career intelligence officer with 23 years of service and documented access to Central Command strategic communications. Sensor logs showed he conducted routine external sensor inspections every 6 hours, alone, outside the installation's shielded perimeter, making him vulnerable to targeted transport. At stardate 474694, the Enterprise moved to within transporter range of Outpost Trivoli, using a nearby asteroid field for sensor cover. Chief O'Brien calibrated the transporter to compensate for Cardassian shielding frequencies. Diana and Data stood ready in the transporter room. I have him, O'Brien reported. One Cardassian biosign outside shield perimeter, stationary, locking on, energizing. Gul Meket materialized on the transporter pad, his expression shifting from confusion to fury in the span of a second. He reached for his disruptor, but Diana moved with speed that made O'Brien blink in surprise. She crossed the distance between them in what seemed like a single step, caught his wrist before the weapon cleared its holster, and applied a precise pressure point technique that caused the disruptor to fall from his suddenly nerveless hand. Gul Meket, Diana said in flawless Cardassian. She had learned the language during a previous encounter with their species, her millennia-long life making linguistic acquisition almost trivial. I apologize for this intrusion. We mean you no permanent harm. But we require information that only you can provide, and we require it immediately. Meket's response was exactly what Starfleet psychological profiles predicted. Aggressive defiance. Federation dogs, this is an act of war when Central Command learns you've abducted one of their officers. Diana's lasso moved with practiced efficiency, looping around Meket's torso before he could complete the threat. The golden rope pulsed with light, soft, warm, but undeniably binding. The change in Meket was immediate and profoundly disturbing to witness. His aggressive posture relaxed, not into submission, but into something resembling serenity. His eyes, previously hard with military discipline, softened into an expression of confused vulnerability. When he spoke again, his voice carried none of its previous hostility. What have you done? I cannot. I must tell you anything you ask. I feel compelled to speak truth. This is wrong. You have no right to violate my mind this way. Diana's expression showed genuine sympathy. You're correct, Gul Meket. I have no right, but I have necessity. Tell me, has Central Command's recent strategic planning been influenced by external forces? Have your orders regarding the Bajoran colonies come through normal command channels? Meket tried to resist. His face showed the strain of attempting to withhold information, but the lasso's power was absolute. Orders. came through normal channels, but the content, unusual, aggressive beyond tactical necessity. Several commanders questioned the logic. We were told questions indicated insufficient loyalty. 3 officers were reassigned to labor battalions for expressing doubt. The remaining command staff, we fear speaking against the orders. But yes, something is wrong. The directives don't match our standard strategic doctrine. "Do you know what's causing this change?" Data asked, his tricorder recording every word. "Unknown. Some officers report dreams, visions of glorious conquest, a presence that makes violence seem logical, even necessary. I myself have felt it, an urge to pursue military solutions when diplomatic options should be preferred. But I am trained to recognize psychological manipulation. Whatever is affecting us is subtle, working through our existing cultural militarism rather than imposing foreign ideology." Diana pressed further. "The attack on the Bajoran colonies. Do you believe it's strategically justified?" Miket's response came reluctantly, each word clearly painful for a career military officer to admit. "No. It's tactically unsound, strategically counterproductive, and will certainly trigger Federation military response that Cardassia cannot currently withstand. It is suicide disguised as strategy, but our commanders cannot see this, or they see it and do not care. The desire to strike, to prove strength, overrides rational analysis." "How do we stop the attack?" Diana asked. "You cannot. The Fourth Order operates under independent authority from Central Command during crisis operations. Gul Evek has full discretion to execute the orders as he interprets them. The only way to countermand would be direct orders from Legate Damar or the Ditapa Council. But they are compromised. I hear their communications. They speak of Bajor as if it were an existential threat rather than a minor diplomatic irritant. Logic has abandoned our leadership." Data consulted his tricorder readings. "Gul Meket, I am detecting unusual energy signatures in Cardassian Central Command communications. Do you have access codes that would allow us to monitor your command network?" Again, Meket struggled visibly against the compulsion to answer. "Yes, access. Code Theta 7 Hebit Nor, encryption. Standard Obsidian Order protocols, keyed to my biometric signature. You would need my retinal scan and DNA sample to authenticate. We can obtain those without harming you," Data assured him. "Please remain calm." The extraction took 6 minutes. Data used a medical scanner to record Miket's biometric data, then accessed a portable computer terminal to establish a backdoor connection into Cardassian Central Command communications. The data that emerged confirmed Diana's worst fears. Communication logs showed Cardassian military leadership communicating in language patterns consistent with psychological manipulation. Strategic assessments that should have counseled caution instead advocated aggression. Economic projections that clearly indicated war would devastate Cardassia's post-Dominion War recovery were dismissed as defeatist analysis. And embedded within the communication streams were energy signatures matching Ari's dimensional profile. Faint, but unmistakable. "It's not just Ari's," Diana breathed, studying the data. "He's brought other entities with him, minor war spirits, divine fragments, consciousness splinters of himself distributed across their command network. He's not influencing them from a single location. He's woven himself into their entire military infrastructure." Picard, observing via secure comlink from the Enterprise bridge, absorbed this information with visible concern. "Data. Can you determine the extent of Ari's influence? How many Cardassian personnel are affected?" "Analyzing, Captain. Based on communication pattern analysis, approximately 73% of Cardassian Central Command personnel show linguistic markers consistent with external psychological influence. The effect is strongest among military leadership and weakest among civilian administrative staff. It appears Ares targets individuals already predisposed toward aggressive solutions, amplifying existing tendencies rather than imposing entirely foreign behavior. Diana removed the lasso from Gul Maquette, who immediately collapsed to his knees, gasping as his mental autonomy returned. She knelt beside him. Gul Maquette, I apologize for what I did to you. It was a violation, and you have every right to hate me for it. But understand this, your leadership is being manipulated by an entity that feeds on violence. The attack on Bajor is not your people's decision, it's his. And if it proceeds, thousands will die on both sides, and Ares will grow strong enough to spread his influence across your entire union. You will become a civilization that exists only to make war. Maquette looked at her with an expression mixing anger, confusion, and something resembling gratitude. Who? What are you? I am someone who has fought this entity for 3,000 years, and I will stop him here with or without your help. But if you truly value Cardassia's future, you will help me. Return to your post. Tell your superiors nothing of this encounter. But when you feel that presence urging you toward violence, resist it. Remember that you are capable of rational thought, that aggression is a choice, not an imperative. Be the voice of reason in a command structure losing its mind. And if I am discovered, if my resistance is seen as betrayal, then you will have died preventing a greater tragedy. I offered no promises of safety, Gul, only the opportunity to be someone who chose conscience over compulsion. Maquette stood slowly, recovering his military bearing despite the obvious psychological trauma of the interrogation. I will consider what you've said. But mark this, Federation woman. What you did to me was a crime. You violated my mind, forced me to betray my government, and extracted intelligence through means that should horrify any civilized species. If we meet again under different circumstances, I will kill you for it. That would be your right, Diana acknowledged. Chief O'Brien, please return Gul Maquette to his previous coordinates. The transporter beam took him, leaving Diana and Data alone in the transporter room. Diana, Data said, may I ask you a question? Of course, Commander. Do you regret using the lasso on Gul Maquette? Diana was silent for a moment. Yes, Data. I regret it. I regret every time I must violate someone's autonomy to serve the greater good. But I have learned across 3 millennia that regret without action is cowardice. I choose to bear the moral weight of necessary violations rather than hide behind principles while people die. Perhaps that makes me a criminal by your Federation's standards, but it makes me effective, and effectiveness saves lives. Data processed this. I believe I understand. You operate by a philosophy that prioritizes consequences over procedures. Starfleet operates by procedures designed to produce good consequences. The conflict between these approaches is irreconcilable. Not irreconcilable, Data, just painful. The question isn't whether we can resolve the conflict, it's whether we can work together despite it. They returned to the bridge where Picard awaited the full intelligence report. The chronometer showed 37 minutes until the Cardassian ultimatum expired. They now had confirmation of Ares' influence and biometric access to Cardassian communications, but they still had no way to stop 17 warships from bombarding 3 colony worlds. At stardate 47473.4, the situation transcended from crisis to metaphysical impossibility. The Enterprise's sensors detected it first, a spatial distortion forming directly off the starboard bow, not the violent dimensional tear that had heralded Ares' arrival, but something more controlled, more deliberate. The distortion carried energy signatures that matched Ares' profile, but felt fundamentally different. Where Ares' presence had been aggressive, invasive. This new signature felt analytical, observant, almost scholarly. Lieutenant Worf's tactical sensors screamed warnings. Captain, unidentified energy matrix forming, 2,000 meters off starboard bow. No corresponding subspace distortion, no chronometric particles. It's as if space is simply deciding to manifest something. The entity that appeared would later be classified by Starfleet xenobiologists as a Class 7 extra-dimensional intelligence, though that clinical designation failed to capture the profound sense of presence that filled the Enterprise bridge. She stood approximately 2 meters tall, humanoid in form, wearing armor that seemed to be constructed from light itself, bronze and silver tones that shifted with impossible depth. Her eyes carried a wisdom that made every officer on the bridge feel simultaneously judged and protected. An owl, a living creature despite the vacuum of space, perched on her shoulder, regarding the Enterprise with unsettling intelligence. Diana recognized her instantly and dropped to one knee. Athena, Lady of Wisdom, why have you come? The goddess, and there was simply no other word that adequately described what stood before them, regarded Diana with an expression mixing affection and disappointment. Rise, Diana. We are beyond such formalities now. I have come because you have violated the divine non-interference pact. You pursued Ares across dimensional boundaries into a realm protected by cosmic law. Your presence here threatens balance that has been maintained for millennia. Before Diana could respond, a second distortion formed, this one accompanied by a flash of light that made every bridge officer instinctively shield their eyes. When vision cleared, another figure stood beside Athena, equally impossible, equally real. Q, the trickster entity that had plagued Picard's career across multiple encounters, appeared in his standard Starfleet uniform. But his expression was entirely different from his usual playful mockery. He looked genuinely fascinated. Well, 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 Q said, circling Athena like a child examining a new toy. Actual gods, not energy beings pretending to be gods like the Organians. Not advanced technology disguised as divinity like the Edo's god. Real, proper, genuine deities from Earth's mythological pantheon. Mon Capitaine, you finally found something that interests me more than tormenting you. Picard's response was delivered with the weary patience of someone who had endured Q's interference too many times to be surprised anymore. Q, this is not the time for your games. We are in the middle of a crisis. Oh, I know all about your crisis, Jean-Luc. God of war, manipulating militaristic lizard people into starting a pointless conflict. Amazon princess trying to stop him. Starfleet command dithering about prime directives and proper procedures while thousands of innocents prepare to die. Standard Tuesday for you, really. But this, he gestured at Athena, this is actually interesting. The Continuum has observed humanity's mythological deities for millennia, but you always stayed in your own dimension, playing with your little mortal followers. What brings you out of retirement? Athena regarded Q with an expression suggesting she classified him as she might classify an insect. Worthy of study, but not particularly threatening. The entity calling itself Q represents a fundamentally different form of existence from Olympian divinity. You are creatures of pure energy who evolved beyond physical form. We are consciousness given shape by mortal belief, powered by worship and sustained by narrative. We are not the same. No, Q agreed, but we're both beyond what these limited carbon-based life forms consider normal, which means we should probably chat about Diana's little interdimensional violation. You see, Goddess, the humans have their own non-interference directive. It's caused me endless amusement watching them struggle to apply it consistently. Now here's Diana, operating by her own moral code, and here's you, trying to enforce your own version of cosmic law. its delicious irony. Diana stood, her expression caught between respect for Athena and frustration with the interruption. Lady Athena, I pursued Ares because he escaped the prison we built for him. He fled into this dimension, this timeline, seeking to start conflicts that would make him powerful enough to break free permanently. I had no choice but to follow. You always have a choice, Diana, Athena replied. That is the burden of free will. The pact was established after the last divine war devastated ancient Earth. All Olympians agreed. We would withdraw from the mortal realm, observe but not intervene, allow humanity to develop without our interference. You were meant to be our final champion in the world of men, then return to Themyscira when your service ended. Instead, you stayed. You involved yourself in mortal conflicts for 3,000 years, and now you have dragged our ancient conflicts into a future humanity has built without us. Data, processing this exchange with his characteristic analytical precision, spoke up. Athena, I hope it is appropriate to address you directly. May I ask a question? The goddess turned her attention to him, and Data experienced something he would later describe as the sensation of being known more completely than any sensor scan could achieve. You may ask, synthetic being. I perceive that you seek understanding rather than advantage. Such curiosity honors my domain. You describe yourself as consciousness given shape by mortal belief. This suggests you are, in essence, constructed from human cultural consciousness, what psychologists might classify as Jungian archetypes made manifest. Is this accurate? Athena's smile suggested approval. The synthetic one speaks with more wisdom than most philosophers. Yes, Commander Data. We are what humanity believed we were, given substance by the power of that belief. When humanity worshipped us, we were strong. As belief faded, we weakened. We retreated to our own dimension not from choice, but from necessity. Humanity stopped feeding us the narrative energy required for sustained manifestation in physical reality. Then why can you manifest now? Counselor Troy asked. Because Diana brought the mythology back, Q answered, clearly enjoying his role as exposition provider. By pursuing Ares through that dimensional rift, by bringing divine conflict into this nice, rational Federation timeline, she re-established the narrative framework that allows Olympian gods to exist in physical space. She didn't just chase a war god, she reopened the channel between myth and reality. Now all the old gods can potentially return, because Diana reminded the universe that they exist. The implications crash through the bridge like a tidal wave. Diana, Picard said carefully, are you telling us that by coming here, you've potentially allowed all of Greek mythology to enter our reality? Not just Greek, Athena corrected. All pantheons exist in similar dimensional spaces. Norse, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Hindu, Chinese. Every god humanity ever believed in exists in the spaces between dimensions, sustained by cultural memory. The pact keeping us separate is now compromised. If Ares succeeds in re-establishing himself in your timeline, others will follow. Your quadrant will face not just one rogue god, but potentially dozens. Outstanding, Q exclaimed. Do you realize what this means? The stodgy Federation might actually face challenges they can't solve with diplomatic speeches and moral superiority. Gods don't negotiate, Jean-Luc. They don't care about your precious principles. They operate by entirely different rules. This is the best thing that's happened to this quadrant in decades. Q, Picard said with dangerous calm. If you're not going to help, please leave. Oh, but I am helping, mon capitaine. I'm providing context. You see, the Continuum has a policy regarding entities like the Olympians. We don't interfere with them because they don't interfere with us. It's a very civilized arrangement. But if they start causing chaos in mortal affairs again, Well, the Continuum might have to take an interest. And trust me, you don't want the Continuum interested in your affairs. We make gods look positively restrained. Athena's expression suggested she took Q's implicit threat seriously. The Continuum has no jurisdiction over Olympian affairs. And Olympians have no jurisdiction in the mortal realm anymore, Q countered. That's what your pact means, doesn't it? You withdrew. You abandoned these people. Now Diana wants to come back and play hero, but she doesn't get to cherry-pick which rules apply. Either she's bound by your divine laws, or she's bound by their mortal laws. She can't be exempt from both. The philosophical debate was interrupted by Lieutenant Worf's tactical alert. Captain, the Cardassian Fourth Order has begun final weapons charging sequences. Estimate 17 minutes until bombardment of Bajoran colonies begins. Diana turned to Athena, her voice carrying 3 millennia of pleading. Lady, I understand I've violated the pact. I accept whatever consequences you decree, but not until after I stop Ares. Thousands of innocent people will die if the Cardassian attack proceeds. Please let me finish this. Then I will return to face judgment. Athena regarded her longest-serving champion with an expression of profound sadness. Diana, you still don't understand. There can be no judgment. You are immortal, but you are not divine. You exist in the space between gods and mortals, belonging fully to neither. The pact binds Olympians, but you are not Olympian. You are our creation, our champion, but not one of us. I cannot compel you to obey divine law because you are fundamentally mortal. And these Federation people cannot compel you to obey their laws because you predate their civilization by millennia. You are, quite literally, beyond any authority's jurisdiction. Then what do you want from me? Diana asked. I want you to come home, Athena said softly. I want you to return to Themyscira, where you belong, and let the mortal realm manage its own conflicts. You have served faithfully for 3,000 years. You have earned rest. Let these people forge their own destiny without divine intervention. I can't, Diana said simply. These people, this Federation, they've built something beautiful, a civilization dedicated to peace, to learning, to helping others. They're what humanity always had the potential to become. I won't abandon them when they need me. Q slow clapped, his expression showing genuine approval. Bravo, Princess. That was beautifully dramatic. But here's the thing. You can't save everyone. And every time you do save someone, you rob them of the agency to save themselves. You're so busy being humanity's champion that you've never stopped to ask whether humanity wants a champion. Picard found himself in the surreal position of potentially agreeing with Q. Diana, I appreciate everything you're trying to do, but Q has a point. The Federation has survived for 200 years by solving our own problems. We faced the Borg, the Dominion, countless other threats, and we've prevailed by working together, by using our principles and our ingenuity. If you fight all our battles for us, what happens when you're not here? Do we become dependent on divine intervention to survive? Diana absorbed this, and for the first time since arriving in Federation space, she looked genuinely uncertain. Captain, are you asking me to leave? To abandon these colonies to their fate? I'm asking you, Picard said carefully, to trust us to handle our own problems. I'm asking you to be an ally rather than a savior. The chronometer showed 15 minutes until bombardment began. 3 parties, divine, cosmic, and mortal, stood at an impasse, each representing different visions of how the universe should operate. And somewhere in the Badlands, Ares laughed, feeding on the conflict his presence had created. The philosophical debate ended when reality intervened. At stardate 47477.9, Gul-Evek's Fourth Order opened fire on the Bajoran colonies. 17 Galore-class warships unleashed coordinated bombardment on Free Haven's planetary shields, overwhelming the colony's defensive grid within 47 seconds. The shields collapsed. Weapons batteries targeted civilian evacuation centers. Diana didn't ask permission. She materialized her armor. No transporter beam, no technological process, simply a manifestation that suggested her equipment existed partially outside normal space-time and could be summoned at will. The God-Killer sword appeared at her hip. The lasso of truth coiled at her waist. The bracelets of submission gleamed on her wrists. She turned to Picard, her expression apologetic but absolute. "Captain, I'm sorry. But I won't stand here debating jurisdiction while people die. Court-martial me if you survive this, but I'm ending it now." Before Athena could intervene, before Q could make another sardonic comment, before Picard could order her restrained, Diana was gone, moving at velocities that made the Enterprise's sensors classify her as a warp-capable missile rather than a biological organism. She crossed the distance to Free Haven in 8 seconds. The combat logs recovered from 17 Cardassian warships, later analyzed by Starfleet Tactical, would become required study material at Starfleet Academy under the classification Asymmetric Warfare, Post-Conventional Threat Assessment. They documented something unprecedented in modern warfare, a single individual engaging an entire military fleet and winning. Diana's approach vector took her directly through the weapons fire of 3 Galore-class cruisers. Disruptor beams, each carrying enough energy to vaporize a standard shuttlecraft, converged on her position. She raised her bracelets and the energy simply stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, but met by a force that refused to yield. The disruptor beams cascaded off her bracelets, redirecting into open space at angles that suggested she wasn't just blocking energy, but geometrically redistributing it. Her first target was the Cardassian flagship, the Gromall. She reached it despite point defense systems that should have made approach impossible, phased through its shields using mechanisms that Starfleet engineers would later spend months trying to explain, and struck the ship's primary disruptor array with the flat of her blade. The recording from the Gromall's bridge captured the impact. The entire ship shuddered. Structural integrity fields strained against force measuring 47,000 kilograms per square centimeter, equivalent to a photon torpedo detonation, but delivered through a single blade swing with such precision that it disabled the weapons array without penetrating the hull. No casualties. The disruptor bank was simply gone. Its connection to the ship's power grid severed so completely that emergency systems couldn't even register what had happened. Gul-Evik's response, captured in Cardassian communication logs, demonstrated the psychological impact of facing an opponent who operated beyond conventional tactical frameworks. All ships target the female, maximum firepower. She's just one person. We have 17 warships. Numbers must prevail. They did not prevail. Diana moved through the Cardassian formation like a force of nature. She disabled the Kavor's shield generators with 3 precise strikes to external emitter arrays. She tore the weapons pod off the door van using nothing but physical strength, the 890-ton structure coming free with a sound that resonated through subspace. She created a barrier, energy shield, force field, divine power. The nomenclature became meaningless, that protected an entire evacuated civilian transport from disruptor fire that should have annihilated it. The Enterprise bridge crew watched in stunned silence as their sensors tracked Diana's movements. She was everywhere simultaneously, moving at velocities approaching Mach 6, engaging 17 targets with tactical awareness that suggested either precognition or information processing capabilities beyond artificial intelligence. "My God," Riker whispered. "She's not even using weapons against most of them. She's just disabling them." Data's analysis was more clinical but no less odd. Commander, Diana is demonstrating non-lethal engagement protocols against 17 warships crewed by approximately 4,300 Cardassian military personnel. She is prioritizing system disablement over crew casualties. I am detecting no Cardassian life signs terminated. She is waging war without killing anyone. Counselor Troy's empathic senses were overwhelmed by the emotional output from the Cardassian fleet. Captain, I'm sensing fear from the Cardassian crews. Not just tactical fear, existential terror. They're facing something that shouldn't exist, and their entire understanding of warfare is collapsing. Some of them are praying, some are questioning their orders. The psychological impact of a single individual defeating their entire fleet it's shattering their military cohesion. On Free Haven, civilian evacuation continued under Diana's protection. Bajoran colony administrators, initially paralyzed by the bombardment, found themselves protected by a warrior they had only heard about in ancient Earth legends. Some recognized her from historical records, images from World War I, grainy photographs of a woman in similar armor standing among soldiers. Others simply knew they were witnessing something impossible. One Bajoran child, recorded by a civilian who was documenting the evacuation, looked up at Diana as she descended to check on civilian status and asked the question that would later define how the Quadrant understood her. "Are you one of the prophets?" Diana knelt to the child's level, her armor still smoking from disruptor impacts that would have killed anyone else. "No, little one. I'm just someone who believes that protecting the innocent is more important than following orders. Stay with your family. You're safe now." The Cardassian flagship Gromol attempted a final desperate gambit. Gul Evek, pushed beyond rational strategy by combination of Ares' influence and tactical desperation, ordered ramming speed toward Free Haven's civilian evacuation center. The 371,000-ton warship accelerated to attack velocity, intending to use its mass as a final weapon. Diana intercepted it. The sensor readings would be analyzed and reanalyzed by Federation physicists for years, generating 17 different theoretical papers and zero consensus on the mechanics involved. Diana positioned herself directly in the Gromol's flight path and stopped it. Not by technology, not by shield generation, but through pure physical force. The warship's forward momentum met her bracelets, and momentum simply ceased to apply. The ship hung in space, engines at full power, generating enough thrust to propel the starship, all of it absorbed by a single individual standing against its prow. Inside the Gromol, every crew member was thrown forward by the instant deceleration. Emergency systems screamed, inertial dampeners failed under loads they were never designed to handle, but the ship held together. Because Diana wasn't trying to destroy it, she was simply refusing to let it pass. Gul Evek, secured in his command chair, stared through the view screen at Diana, who was clearly visible against the backdrop of space, holding his entire ship at bay with no apparent strain. His expression, captured in the ship's internal logs, showed a man whose understanding of reality had fundamentally shattered. What are you?" he transmitted on all channels. Diana's response was gentle, almost pitying. "I am someone who has seen too many wars, Gul Evek. I am someone who understands that you are not acting by your own choice. And I am someone telling you, with all the compassion I possess, stand down. Your fleet is disabled. Your mission has failed. There is no shame in retreat when faced with overwhelming opposition. Take your ships and go home." It was at this precise moment that Ares chose to manifest. The god of war appeared not as energy signature or psychological influence, but in full corporeal form, armored in bronze and darkness, standing 3 meters tall, radiating aggression that made every sensor on the Enterprise spike to maximum readings. He materialized directly between Diana and the Cardassian fleet, his voice resonating across multiple frequencies simultaneously. How touching, little princess. Still trying to save everyone. Still believing that compassion can defeat war. But you forget, I am war. I don't need to kill anyone myself. I just need to whisper to those already inclined toward violence. These Cardassians wanted to attack Bajor. I simply helped them understand that their desires were justified. And now, thanks to you, they have seen one person defeat their entire fleet. How do you think that will affect their psychology? How do you think they will respond to such humiliation? Diana released the Gromall, letting it drift in space, and faced her ancient enemy. Ares, you've manipulated good people into serving your ends. That stops now. Does it? Ares gestured toward the Cardassian fleet. Look at them, Diana. Look at their rage, their shame, their desire for revenge. You defeated them without killing them, thinking you were being merciful. But you've done something worse. You've humiliated them. You've shown them they are powerless. And powerless people become desperate. Desperate people become violent. You haven't prevented war, sweet Diana. You've guaranteed it. Because now the Cardassians won't just want to conquer Bajor. They'll want to prove they're not weak. They'll escalate. They'll seek weapons, allies, anything to ensure they never face humiliation like this again. You broke their military in minutes. Rebuilding their pride will take years of conflict, and I will feed on every moment of it. The horrible realization crashed through Diana's tactical awareness. Ares was right. She had thought she was preventing casualties by disabling rather than destroying the fleet. But she had created a psychological wound that might fester for years. Aboard the Enterprise, Counselor Troy confirmed Ares' analysis. Captain, I'm sensing the emotional shift in the Cardassian crews. The initial fear is transitioning to rage. They're not thinking about going home. They're thinking about revenge, about proving they're not inferior. Diana stopped the immediate violence, but she may have created long-term destabilization. Picard absorbed this, then made a decision. Hail Diana. Secure channel. The transmission reached her directly, bypassing standard communications to speak in her ear through technology that felt almost like telepathy. Diana, this is Picard. Do not engage Ares in combat. Repeat, do not engage. If you fight him here, you'll feed him exactly what he wants. More conflict. We need a different approach. Diana, hovering in space facing the god of war, responded subvocally. Captain, if I don't fight him, he'll continue manipulating conflicts across your quadrant. How do I stop him without fighting? You trust us, Picard replied. You let the Federation handle the diplomatic aftermath. You let us help the Cardassians understand what happened here. You let us build peace the way we know how, slowly, carefully, through negotiation and mutual understanding. But first, you need to not give Ares the battle he wants. Ares laughed, the sound carrying across vacuum through mechanisms that violated acoustic physics. The noble captain wants you to stand down, Diana, to let mortals handle divine affairs. How very Federation of him. But tell me, what happens when I visit the Klingon Empire next? Or the Romulan Star Empire? How many conflicts can you not fight before one of them spirals beyond control? Diana sheathed her sword. The gesture was deliberate, symbolic, and required every ounce of discipline she possessed. You're right, Ares. Fighting you here would make things worse. So I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to do something you can't possibly understand. I'm going to trust these people to build something better than war. The god of war's expression shifted to genuine surprise. You're walking away? Diana of Themyscira, champion of the oppressed, guardian of the innocent, is choosing not to fight? I'm choosing Diana said calmly, to have faith in people rather than violence. Try it sometime. She turned her back on Ares, an insult in any warrior culture, but a deliberate message, and descended toward the Enterprise, which had moved closer to retrieve her. Ares watched her go, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke words that would haunt Starfleet's strategic planning for years. You think you've won by not fighting, little princess? You've just shown these mortals that divine intervention can solve their problems. They'll call for you again and again until they've forgotten how to save themselves. You've made them dependent on a savior. That's a crueler fate than anything I could inflict. He vanished, his presence withdrawing but not disappearing entirely. Diana materialized in the Enterprise's shuttle bay, where Picard waited with a security escort, not to arrest her but to ensure her safety from crew members who were unsure whether to treat her as hero or threat. That, Diana said quietly, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I know, Picard replied, but it was also one of the wisest. Come, we have diplomatic work to do. The aftermath of the Battle of Bajor created diplomatic complications that made the battle itself seem straightforward by comparison. The Cardassian Fourth Order withdrew to Cardassian space, their ships crippled but crews intact. Gul-Evek transmitted a formal protest to the Federation Council, claiming unprovoked assault by an unknown weapon of mass destruction deployed by Starfleet. The Bajoran Provisional Government issued declarations of eternal gratitude to the Guardians sent by the Prophets. The Federation Council convened emergency sessions to determine whether Diana's intervention constituted a violation of Federation law, an act of war, or a humanitarian intervention that fell outside existing legal frameworks. None of it mattered to Diana, because Ares hadn't left. At stardate 47481 Totu, 3 days after the battle, sensors detected his energy signature manifesting on Bajor itself, specifically within the Fire Caves, a geothermally active region considered sacred by traditional Bajoran religious practices. The caves were ancient, predating Bajoran space travel, and carried mythological significance as a place where Pa-Wraith entities, evil beings in Bajoran theology, were said to dwell. Of course he'd choose a place of religious significance, Diana observed, studying the sensor readings in the Enterprise's observation lounge. Gods gain power from belief, from narrative resonance. The Fire Caves are saturated with centuries of Bajoran spiritual energy, fear, reverence, prayer. It's the perfect location for Ares to establish a permanent anchor point in this dimension. Captain Picard, Commander Sisko, attending via subspace from DS9, Diana, Data, and Counselor Troy formed the crisis response team. Athena had withdrawn after the battle, declaring that she would observe but not directly intervene, a position that Diana found simultaneously respectful of mortal autonomy and frustratingly passive. Q had vanished, presumably to watch events unfold from whatever cosmic vantage point entities like him employed for entertainment. Why the Fire Caves specifically? Sisko asked. Why not Cardassia Prime, where he could directly influence their military leadership? Diana answered based on 3 millennia of experience fighting divine entities. Because he's transitioning strategies. Phase 1 was amplifying existing conflicts that failed when I disabled the Cardassian fleet. Phase 2 is establishing a permanent presence in your dimension. If he can anchor himself to a location saturated with belief and emotional energy, he won't need to manipulate individuals anymore. He'll become a fixed feature of your reality, constantly radiating influence across the quadrant. Think of it as establishing an embassy, except instead of diplomats, he's exporting violence itself. Data processed this with characteristic analytical precision. Diana, you stated that only divine weapons can harm Olympian entities. Your God-Killer sword is presumably such a weapon. If you were to engage Ares in the fire caves with intent to destroy rather than contain, what would be the probable outcome? Diana's expression grew somber. The god killer was forged specifically to slay divine beings. If I drive it through Ares' heart while he's manifesting in corporeal form, it would kill him permanently. He wouldn't retreat to his dimension. He would cease to exist across all dimensions simultaneously. That sounds like a victory, Cisco observed. It would be genocide, Diana replied. Ares is not just an individual. He's the concept of war given consciousness. If I kill him, I don't just eliminate a troublesome god. I eliminate the abstract principle he represents. War as a concept would be diminished, possibly eliminated from sapient psychology throughout the timeline. Counselor Troy leaned forward, her empathic senses trying to grasp the implications. Diana, are you saying that killing Ares would make all species less capable of warfare? I don't know, Diana admitted. The gods have never truly understood the full extent of our influence on mortal reality. We suspect that we don't just draw power from belief. We also shape the psychology that generates that belief. If Ares dies, sapient species might lose the capacity for organized violence, or they might simply lose the psychological frameworks that make war seem glorious or necessary. Conflict might continue, but without the mythological resonance that transforms violence into something noble. Picard absorbed this, his archaeological training making him perhaps uniquely suited to understand the implications. You're describing the elimination of war as a cultural concept. That sounds utopian. Or catastrophic, Diana countered. Species that have structured their entire civilizations around martial values, the Klingons, for instance, might experience complete societal collapse if war suddenly seemed meaningless. The Jem'Hadar, bred specifically for combat, might lose their sense of purpose entirely. Entire cultures could unravel. I can't predict the full consequences. And that uncertainty is why I've never killed an Olympian god, even when I had the chance. Data's positronic brain processed multiple scenarios simultaneously. The ethical calculus is complex. Killing Ares eliminates an immediate threat, but potentially creates civilization-scale psychological disruption. Not killing Ares leaves him free to influence conflicts indefinitely. There is no clearly optimal solution. Welcome to my life, Commander, Diana said wryly. 3,000 years of impossible choices. The tactical planning proceeded under profound moral uncertainty. The consensus: Diana would confront Ares in the fire caves, attempt to force him into imprisonment using her divine weapons and artifacts, but avoid lethal engagement if possible. The Enterprise would provide technical support, deploying the modified psionic dampening field that Counselor Troy and Data had developed. Bajoran security, under Colonel Kira Nerys's command, would evacuate civilian populations within a 100-kilometer radius. At stardate 474-15, the operation commenced. The Enterprise transported Diana to the fire cave's entrance, a massive geological aperture that descended 1,700 meters into Bajor's volcanic mantle. The temperature readings at the cave mouth measured 73 degrees Celsius. Deeper, where Ares had manifested, temperatures exceeded 200 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere: 78% nitrogen, 19% oxygen, 3% sulfur compounds, hostile to unprotected humans. Diana, whose divine heritage made her immune to environmental extremes, descended without breathing apparatus or environmental suit. The cave system branched into multiple passages, each carved by millennia of geothermal activity. Bajoran religious symbols lined certain passages, glyphs honoring the prophets, warnings against disturbing the Pa Wraith, prayers for protection. Diana moved deeper, following her innate ability to sense divine presence. Ares was waiting. He had constructed a throne from the cave's volcanic rock, molding stone through force of will into a seat that radiated aggression. Around him, the cave walls showed images, not carved, but manifested, as if the stone itself was displaying Ares' desired visions. Battles throughout history, ancient human warfare, Cardassian conflicts, Klingon campaigns, Federation-Romulan confrontations, a gallery of violence spanning civilizations and centuries. Diana, Ares greeted her, his voice echoing through the caves with harmonics that made the volcanic rock resonate. "Welcome to my temple. I've been expecting you." "This ends now, Ares. I'm offering you one chance. Return to your dimension voluntarily, or I force you back." Ares laughed, the sound triggering minor seismic activity. "Force me? Little princess, we've fought across millennia. You know you cannot defeat me in direct combat. I am war itself. Every conflict that has ever occurred feeds me, and this quadrant—" He gestured at the images on the walls. "This quadrant is saturated with violence. Klingons who glorify combat, Cardassians who built an empire on conquest, Romulans who view war as statecraft, Jem'Hadar literally bred for battle. This isn't Earth in the 21st century, where humans were starting to outgrow their violent tendencies. This is a region of space where war is encoded into cultural DNA. I will thrive here." Diana drew her sword, the God Killer, forged in Themyscira's divine forges from metals that existed partially outside conventional matter. Its edge gleamed with light that had nothing to do with reflection and everything to do with fundamental opposition to divine existence. Ares' eyes fixed on the blade, and for the first time Diana saw genuine wariness in his expression. "You wouldn't. Diana of Themyscira, champion of peace, would not commit deicide." "I would," Diana said quietly, "if killing you was the only way to save thousands of innocent lives. But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. Surrender, Ares. Return to your imprisonment. Don't force me to make a choice I'll regret for eternity." The god of war rose from his throne, manifesting his own divine armor. Bronze plates that seemed to be forged from screams and soaked in the blood of every warrior who had ever fallen in battle. He held no weapon, because Ares needed no weapon. His hands generated fire not through technology, but through divine will. His presence alone was weapon enough. "Then let's see if you have the courage, princess. Strike me down, eliminate war from this universe, create your perfect pacifist paradise, and watch as civilizations built on martial honor collapse into meaninglessness. Do it. Be the person who decided that entire cultures should be psychologically neutered for their own good." Diana advanced, the God Killer raised. Above ground, the Enterprise deployed its modified psionic field, generating a sphere of emotional dampening that extended into the fire caves. The effect was immediate. Ares staggered, his connection to the ambient aggression in the region weakening. "Clever," he admitted, "turning my own principles against me. Reduce emotion, reduce my power. But Diana, here's what you haven't considered. I'm not just in this cave. I've spent 3 days establishing anchor points throughout the quadrant. My consciousness is distributed across 17 different conflict zones. Even if you kill this manifestation, I'll simply reconstitute elsewhere. You cannot destroy me without consequences you're unwilling to accept." Diana realized the trap. Ares had used the Battle of Bajor as distraction while establishing a distributed presence. Killing him here would trigger a cascade effect across every location where he had anchored himself, potentially causing psychological disruption to thousands of individuals simultaneously. She lowered her sword, not in surrender, but in realization. "You're right," she said. I can't kill you, not without causing harm that might exceed the harm you'd cause by continuing to exist. But I can do something else. I can isolate you, contain you, make you irrelevant. How? Ares demanded. Diana activated her lasso of truth, not to bind Ares, but to bind herself. The golden rope wrapped around her waist, compelling her own words to be absolute truth. I vow, by the lasso of truth, that compels honesty from all who touch it, that I will remain in this timeline, in this federation, as guardian against divine manipulation. I will oppose you not through violence, but through constant vigilance. Every conflict you try to amplify, I will mediate. Every war you try to start, I will prevent. You wanted me out of your way, gone back to Themyscira. Instead, I'm staying. Permanently. You're going to spend eternity fighting me for every inch of influence you try to claim. Ares' expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, frustration, and finally, grudging respect. You're neutralizing me through commitment, making yourself the counterbalance to my existence? Exactly. You feed on war, I'll feed on peace. You amplify aggression, I'll amplify compassion. We'll be locked in eternal opposition, and neither of us will ever fully win. It's not perfect, Ares, but it's sustainable. And it prevents the catastrophic consequences of either your total victory or your complete destruction. Above ground, Picard received Diana's transmission explaining her strategy. His response was immediate. Diana, are you committing to staying in the 24th century? Permanently? Yes, Captain. This is where I'm needed. The Federation is building something remarkable, but it exists in a dangerous quadrant. If I return to my own time, Ares will run unchecked here. I can't allow that. Ares, still standing in the fire caves, contemplated Diana's vow. This is not victory, Princess. This is stalemate. You condemn yourself to endless vigilance, never resting, always watching for my influence. That's not life. That's imprisonment of a different sort. It's service, Diana corrected. It's what I've always done. And it's what I'll continue doing. The question is, do you accept this arrangement, or do I force it by driving you back into your dimension and sealing you there with divine wards? Ares considered. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. I accept. But understand this, Diana. I'm patient. I can wait centuries, millennia. Eventually, you'll falter. You'll miss something. And when you do, I'll be there. And I'll be there to stop you, Diana replied. The god of war dissipated, his presence withdrawing but not vanishing entirely. The anchor points he had established remained, but dormant, waiting. Diana emerged from the fire caves to find a Starfleet security team waiting, along with Bajoran religious officials who were uncertain whether to thank her or fear her. She had prevented immediate catastrophe. But she had also committed herself to an indefinite tour of duty in a future she barely understood. The diplomatic aftermath of Diana's intervention created jurisdictional questions that the Federation's legal framework was fundamentally unprepared to address. At stardate 474852, 6 days after the Fire Caves confrontation, an unprecedented joint session convened aboard Deep Space Nine. Present, Federation Council representatives, Starfleet Command admirals, Bajoran provisional government officials, Cardassian diplomatic observers, Klingon Empire representatives, and Romulan observers maintaining neutral interest in proceedings that might set precedent for handling superpowered individuals in the Alpha Quadrant. And at the center of it all, Diana of Themyscira, seated alone at a table designed for defendants, wearing civilian clothing rather than her armor, a conscious choice to appear as diplomat rather than warrior. Ambassador Taylor of Vulcan, serving as session moderator, opened with characteristic Vulcan directness. This assembly convenes to address the legal status, operational authority, and jurisdictional classification of the individual identifying herself as Diana of Themyscira. 3 questions require resolution. First, is she a Federation citizen, an extra-dimensional visitor, or a temporal anomaly? Second, does her intervention in the Bajoran crisis constitute lawful humanitarian action or unlawful military aggression? Third, what authority, if any, does the Federation possess to regulate her future activities? Admiral Nechayev began the prosecution. Though no formal charges had been filed, her presentation functioned as one. Diana of Themyscira demonstrated capabilities that classify her as a strategic weapon. She disabled 17 Cardassian warships single-handedly, demonstrating force projection exceeding anything in Federation or Cardassian arsenals. Her abilities include flight through vacuum without technological assistance, physical strength measured in megatons of force, energy deflection through unknown mechanisms, and apparent immortality. Any individual possessing such capabilities represents a potential threat to regional stability, regardless of stated intentions. Admiral, Diana responded calmly, I understand your concern. But classifying me as a weapon reduces me to an object rather than acknowledging me as a person. I have agency, moral reasoning, and 3,000 years of experience making ethical decisions. I am not a tool to be controlled or a threat to be contained. I am an individual offering my assistance to a civilization I admire. Gul Hadar, representing Cardassian interests, spoke with barely controlled rage. Assistance? You humiliated the Fourth Order. You demonstrated that Cardassia's military power is meaningless against you. How do we maintain regional security when a single individual can nullify our entire defensive posture? What prevents you from deciding that Cardassian sovereignty itself is unjust and intervening to reshape our government? The question struck at the fundamental tension. Diana's power made her accountability theoretical rather than practical. She could claim to respect Federation law, but who could enforce that law if she chose to violate it? Colonel Kira Nerys, representing Bajor, offered a contrasting perspective. Gul Hadar speaks of humiliation. I speak of saved lives. Diana prevented the bombardment of 3 Bajoran colonies. 200,000 Bajorans are alive today because she acted when Federation diplomacy had failed. Should we condemn her for that? Should we tell those families that their loved ones should have died to preserve Cardassian military pride? The issue, Admiral Ross interjected, is not whether Diana's actions saved lives. The issue is whether the Federation can tolerate unregulated, superpowered intervention in political crises. If we accept Diana's actions as legitimate, we establish precedent that individuals with sufficient power can override sovereign government authority whenever they judge such override morally necessary. That's not law. That's might making right. Diana leaned forward, her expression earnest. Admiral, I understand the precedent concern, but consider this. Your Federation already operates on principles of intervention. You intervene to prevent genocide. You intervene to protect pre-warp civilizations from exploitation. You intervene when powerful entities threaten weaker ones. The Prime Directive itself is an intervention. You've decided that cultures should develop without outside influence, and you enforce that decision. All governance is imposing values on others. The question isn't whether to intervene, but when intervention serves justice rather than self-interest. Ambassador Talar's eyebrow rose fractionally, the Vulcan equivalent of profound surprise. You are arguing that the Prime Directive is itself a form of interventionism. That is, philosophically sophisticated. I've had 3,000 years to think about these questions, Diana replied. I've watched empires rise and fall. I've seen interventions that saved civilizations and interventions that destroyed them. There are no easy answers, Ambassador. But I can tell you this. Absolute non-intervention is no more ethical than constant intervention. Both extremes cause suffering. The challenge is finding balance. Captain Picard, attending as both witness and implicit Diana's advocate, added his perspective. Diana raises valid points about the philosophical limits of the Prime Directive. However, the Federation's legal framework requires predictability. Our citizens and our neighbors need to understand what actions will trigger Federation response. Diana operates by personal moral code rather than codified law. That creates fundamental uncertainty. How do we know when she'll intervene? What standards guide her decisions? The same standards that guide yours, Captain, Diana replied. I intervene to prevent immediate harm to innocents when other options have failed. I don't impose government structures. I don't assassinate leaders I disagree with. I don't conquer territories. I protect people who cannot protect themselves. If the Federation finds that principle objectionable, then we have a deeper philosophical disagreement than I realized. The Romulan observer, Commander Toreth, attending via secure subspace link, spoke for the first time. The Romulan Star Empire observes these proceedings with interest. We note that the Federation appears uncomfortable with the existence of an individual who can act without institutional approval. We also note that such an individual could dramatically alter regional power balance. Diana of Themyscira, what would prevent you from deciding that the Romulan Star Empire's governmental structure is unjust and intervening to change it? Diana met the Romulan commander's gaze through the view screen. Commander Toreth, I've existed for 3,000 years without conquering Earth or imposing my values on every government I encountered. What prevents me from invading Romulus is the same thing that's always prevented me: respect for self-determination. I intervene to stop immediate harm, not to reshape societies according to my preferences. Your government's structure is your concern, not mine, unless your government starts committing atrocities against defenseless populations. Then it becomes my concern. And you determine what constitutes atrocities worthy of intervention, Toreth pressed. Yes, just as your government determines what constitutes threats worthy of military response, just as the Federation determines what constitutes violations worthy of enforcement. All actors in galactic politics make these determinations. The difference is that I, as an individual rather than institution, can make them more quickly and with less bureaucratic consideration. Whether that's a strength or weakness depends on your perspective. The debate continued for hours, covering questions that had no satisfactory answers. Citizenship status. Was Diana a Federation citizen by virtue of being from Earth? Or was she an extra-dimensional entity with no claim to citizenship? If she was a citizen, did she possess rights that the Federation was obligated to protect? If she wasn't, did the Federation possess authority to regulate her actions? Military classification. Was Diana a person with extraordinary abilities, or was she herself a weapon system requiring arms control treaties? Cardassian representatives insisted she met the definition of strategic military asset and should be subject to limitations similar to those governing weapons of mass destruction. Bajoran representatives argued that classifying a sentient being as a weapon violated fundamental rights. Operational authority. Under what circumstances could Diana act without Federation approval? Could she intervene in conflicts outside Federation space? Could she involve herself in internal Federation matters? Who had standing to file grievances if her actions caused harm? Liability and accountability. If Diana's interventions caused unintended consequences, economic disruption, political instability, psychological trauma, who bore responsibility? Could she be prosecuted under Federation law? If so, what court had jurisdiction? What prison could hold an immortal with godlike powers? Data, attending as expert witness on artificial intelligence and unique entities, offered analysis that reframed the debate. This assembly is attempting to apply legal frameworks designed for governments, corporations, and conventional individuals to an entity that fits none of these categories. Diana is functionally similar to artificial intelligence from a legal perspective, a being with capabilities exceeding human norms, requiring new frameworks for integration into society. The Federation addressed this with my own legal status, establishing that sufficiently advanced synthetic beings possess rights and responsibilities distinct from either property or conventional citizenship. Perhaps Diana requires similar classification, recognition as a unique individual with protected rights and negotiated responsibilities. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Gul Hadar, after hours of hostile questioning, spoke with something approaching grudging respect. I have reviewed the combat logs from the Battle of Bajor 17 times. Diana disabled our fleet without killing a single Cardassian. She had opportunities to destroy our ships, to slaughter our crews, to permanently cripple Cardassian military capacity. She chose restraint. That restraint demonstrates judgment, not mere power. I still maintain that her intervention was illegal and destabilizing, but I acknowledge that her intentions appear genuinely humanitarian rather than imperialistic. It was the opening Diana needed. Gul Hadar, thank you for that acknowledgement. I propose a solution: provisional diplomatic status. The Federation grants me recognition as an independent diplomatic entity. Not a citizen, not a visitor, but something comparable to an embassy. I operate with diplomatic immunity for actions taken in pursuit of humanitarian objectives, but I also accept limitations. I agree not to intervene in internal Federation political disputes. I agree to coordinate with Starfleet Command when my actions might affect Federation strategic interests. I agree to submit to arbitration if my interventions cause harm to Federation allies. In exchange, the Federation acknowledges my right to operate independently when immediate humanitarian crises occur. Ambassador Talar considered this. You propose a formal treaty between the Federation and yourself as an independent entity. Precedent exists for treaties with individual, non-corporeal beings, the Organians, for instance, but you are corporeal, making classification complex. Then make it complex, Diana replied. The universe is complex. Your laws should reflect that reality rather than forcing reality into overly simplistic categories. Admiral Nechayev, who had opposed Diana throughout the proceedings, surprised everyone by supporting the proposal. It's unorthodox, but it addresses our concerns. We establish clear parameters for Diana's operations, create accountability mechanisms, and acknowledge that controlling her through force is impractical. We're essentially doing what the Federation has always done when encountering entities more powerful than ourselves. We negotiate. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous. 7 Federation Council members voted against, arguing that legitimizing superpowered individuals set dangerous precedent. Cardassian observers formally protested. Romulan representatives withdrew from observation, citing concerns about regional stability. But the majority prevailed. At stardate 474085.8, the Themysciran Accord was ratified. Article 1. Diana of Themyscira was recognized as an independent humanitarian entity with provisional diplomatic standing. Article 2. She possessed authority to intervene in humanitarian crises involving imminent mass casualties, with good faith standard for determining legitimacy. Article 3. She agreed to coordinate with Starfleet Command for interventions affecting Federation strategic interests, except when time constraints made coordination impossible. Article 4. She submitted to arbitration before a joint tribunal, Federation Diana and neutral third party, for disputes arising from her actions. Article 5. The Federation agreed not to attempt forcible containment unless Diana committed actions classified as crimes against sapient life under Federation legal code. Article 6. Either party could terminate the accord with 60 days' notice, though termination did not retroactively affect Diana's legal status or rights. Diana signed the accord using ink and paper, ancient technology for an ancient being. Captain Picard witnessed the signing, along with Commander Sisko, Admiral Nechayev, and Ambassador Talar. As the assembly dispersed, Picard spoke privately with Diana in DS9's wardroom. You've committed yourself to something unprecedented, an indefinite stay in our time bound by treaty to a civilization you barely know. I know enough, Captain. I've watched your Federation for 6 days. I've seen how you handle crises, how you debate ethics, how you genuinely try to balance competing values. You're not perfect. No civilization is. But you're striving toward ideals that humanity in my era could barely imagine. I want to help you protect that. And Ares? Your vow to oppose him indefinitely? Diana smiled faintly. That was perhaps the easiest commitment I made. I've been fighting Ares in various forms for 3 millennia. At least now I'm fighting him alongside allies who understand what's at stake. Picard extended his hand. Then welcome to the 24th century, Diana. I suspect you're going to find it both familiar and profoundly strange. Captain, Diana replied, shaking his hand, I've lived through the Bronze Age, the classical era, both world wars, the Cold War, and everything between. Strange is relative. What matters is whether it's worth protecting. And your Federation? It's worth everything. The practical implementation of the Themysciran Accord required infrastructure that the Federation had never needed before. Diplomatic protocols for a superpowered individual, communication systems for coordinating with an entity who could cross star systems through personal flight, and strategic planning frameworks that incorporated someone whose capabilities exceeded most starship systems. Starfleet Command assigned commander data to serve as primary liaison, his synthetic nature making him one of the few beings who could process Diana's capabilities analytically without the psychological dissonance that affected most humanoids who encountered her. Counselor Troy served as psychological consultant, helping Diana navigate 24th century social norms, and Captain Picard, by virtue of being the first Federation officer to successfully negotiate with her, became unofficial advisor for what Starfleet internal memoranda began classifying as Olympian-class entity relations. At Stardate 47489.8, 3 weeks after the Accord's ratification, Diana established formal residence aboard Deep Space Nine. Commander Sisko offered her quarters on the station's habitat ring, not as prisoner or guest, but as recognized diplomatic resident. The quarters were modified to accommodate her unique requirements. Reinforced structural supports, her artifacts generated gravitational anomalies, enhanced privacy shielding, certain alien species found her divine energy signature psychologically disruptive, and direct communication access to Starfleet Command. The Alpha Quadrant's response to Diana's permanent presence divided along predictable lines. The Klingon Empire issued formal declaration of respect, classifying Diana as worthy opponent and inviting her to attend martial ceremonies. Chancellor Gowron's statement included traditional Klingon poetry about warriors who fight without seeking glory. The highest compliment Klingon culture could offer, someone who disabled an entire fleet non-lethally. The Cardassian Union maintained official diplomatic protest while privately adjusting their strategic planning to account for what their military analysts classified as the Themysciran factor. Cardassian intelligence devoted significant resources to studying Diana's capabilities, capabilities limitations, and psychological profile. Their conclusion: transmitted to Central Command in classified briefings. Direct military confrontation with Diana of Themyscira is inadvisable under all circumstances. Recommend diplomatic engagement and strategic avoidance. The Romulan Star Empire withdrew observers from Federation diplomatic functions, citing concerns about unpredictable superpowered entities operating without institutional oversight. Romulan intelligence subsequently attempted 3 separate covert operations to assess Diana's capabilities and vulnerabilities. All 3 failed when Diana detected the surveillance and politely but firmly requested they stop. The Romulan Senate's classified response to these failures reportedly included significant debate about whether Diana constituted greater threat than the Dominion. The Ferengi Alliance attempted to negotiate business arrangements. Grand Naga Zek personally contacted Diana, offering to market her image, sell authentication certificates for genuine Diana-saved lives, and establish official Diana of Themyscira merchandise. Diana declined politely, then less politely when Zek persisted, then finally convinced him to stop by, demonstrating that she could hear his communications from across the quadrant and found his voice persistently grating. Zek retreated, but Ferengi economic analysts noted that sectors where Diana operated experienced increased civilian confidence and economic activity. The Diana effect became a recognized factor in regional economic forecasting. The Bajoran Provisional Government declared Diana Friend of Bajor and commissioned religious artwork depicting her alongside the prophets, a theological statement suggesting they considered her divine intervention compatible with Bajoran faith. Diana found this profoundly uncomfortable and requested that Bajorans remember she was a person, not a deity. Her request was respectfully ignored by Bajoran religious authorities, who argued that divinity was not something individuals could decline if the prophets recognized it. Within the Federation itself, public response was overwhelming but divided. Opinion polls conducted by Federation News Service showed 73% of Federation citizens approved of Diana's presence and the Themysciran Accord. 68% believed she would be a valuable asset during humanitarian crises. 52% expressed concerns about accountability and oversight. 41% worried that her presence might encourage other superpowered individuals to seek similar diplomatic recognition. 89% agreed she was probably capable of defeating their local planetary defense grid, which created interesting psychological tension between appreciation and vulnerability. The most significant challenge proved to be Diana's adjustment to 24th century technology and culture. Commander Data compiled comprehensive briefings covering 300 years of human development, technological advancement, and cultural evolution. Diana absorbed the information with remarkable speed. Her millennia-long life had given her practice adapting to changing civilizations, but certain aspects of Federation culture proved conceptually challenging. Replicator technology troubled her philosophical sensibilities. She understood the mechanics but struggled with cultural implications of post-scarcity economics. "In my time," she explained to Data during one briefing, "scarcity created cooperation. People worked together because survival required it. How does the Federation maintain social cohesion when individual survival no longer requires community?" Data's response became the foundation for what Starfleet Academy would later teach as post-scarcity ethics. The Federation replaced survival-based cooperation with aspiration-based cooperation. Humans no longer work together to avoid death. They work together to achieve excellence. It is cooperation motivated by possibility rather than necessity. The Prime Directive remained their deepest philosophical disagreement. Diana understood the reasoning but rejected the absolute application. "I've watched civilizations destroy themselves, Data. I've seen genocide, slavery, oppression that could have been prevented with minimal intervention. The Prime Directive asks people to stand by and watch suffering when they could alleviate it. That's not moral neutrality. It's moral cowardice dressed as principle. Data's counter-argument reflected decades of Starfleet philosophy. The Prime Directive recognizes that intervention, however well-intentioned, often produces consequences worse than non-intervention. Cultures develop resilience by solving their own problems. External solutions may resolve immediate crises, but prevent long-term growth. Then let them choose, Diana replied. Offer help. If they refuse, respect that refusal. But don't pretend that withholding help you could easily provide is somehow more ethical than offering it. The debate continued across multiple sessions, never reaching resolution, but deepening mutual respect. They agreed to disagree, which both recognized as achievement in itself. Holodeck technology fascinated Diana, particularly its potential for historical recreation and combat training. She spent hours in holodecks reconstructing ancient Themyscira, walking through virtual memories of her home. She also created training programs, combat scenarios based on 3,000 years of experience that Starfleet security found simultaneously invaluable and humbling. Even holographic versions of Diana's fighting techniques proved nearly impossible for most officers to replicate. Transporter technology made her uncomfortable in ways she couldn't fully articulate. "It feels like dying," she told Dr. Crusher during medical consultations. "Your technology disassembles me at molecular level and reassembles me elsewhere. How do I know the Diana who rematerializes is the same Diana who was transported? Perhaps the original dies, and a copy believes itself continuous." Crusher's response that the transporter maintained quantum state information, ensuring personal continuity, helped intellectually but didn't resolve Diana's visceral discomfort. She used transporters when operationally necessary, but preferred flying through space personally. Borg threat assessments disturbed her profoundly. When briefed on the Borg Collective, Diana experienced what Counselor Troy identified as existential horror, the recognition of a threat that her 3 millennia of experience had not prepared her to face. "Ares amplifies existing violence," she said quietly after reviewing Borg encounter logs. "The Borg eliminate individuality itself. They don't make people worse. They make them cease being people. I don't know if I can fight that." "Then it's fortunate," Picard replied, "that you won't have to fight them alone. The Federation has developed strategies for engaging the Borg. You would be a valuable asset, but not sole defense." The conversation marked subtle shift in Diana's relationship with the Federation. She had arrived as savior, intending to protect less powerful mortals. But facing threats like the Borg, she recognized herself not as superior protector, but as powerful ally among many. The Federation didn't need saving, it needed partnership. At stardate 474895, Commander Sisko invited Diana to join DS9's senior staff for family dinner, an informal tradition where Sisko cooked meals from Earth for his crew. Diana attended, experiencing something she hadn't felt in decades: normalcy. She ate gumbo, discussed Bajoran politics, played with Sisko's son Jake, and laughed at Chief O'Brien's complaints about transporter maintenance. "This," she said at evening's end, "this is what I've been protecting for 3,000 years. Not grand civilizations or abstract ideals. This. People gathering, sharing meals, caring for each other's children, complaining about work. This is why I fight." 3 weeks after the Themysciran Accords ratification, Athena manifested one final time. She appeared in Diana's quarters aboard DS9, her divine presence triggering station-wide sensor alerts that had security teams responding before Diana could explain. "Stand down," Diana transmitted to Ops. "She's family." Complicated family, but family. Athena regarded her wayward champion with expression mixing pride and concern. You've committed yourself to them, Diana, not just for years or decades, but potentially for centuries. The Federation won't last forever. Civilizations rise and fall. When they fall, will you fall with them? If necessary, Diana replied. Better to stand with flawed people trying to build something good than stand apart in perfect isolation. You taught me that, Athena. You sent me into the world of men to be bridge between divine and mortal. I'm still building that bridge. It just spans more time and space than either of us imagined. Athena was silent for a long moment. Then, the other Olympians question my decision to allow this. They believe you'll expose us, bring divine conflicts into mortal politics, destabilize the careful boundaries we've maintained. Let them question. I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it because it's right. Even Ares, especially Ares, he thrives in shadows, in unexamined violence. The Federation shines light into shadows. They analyze conflicts, seek root causes, pursue understanding. That's exactly the environment that weakens Ares. By staying here, I'm not just opposing him. I'm helping create the cultural conditions that make his influence irrelevant. Athena smiled, genuine warmth that made her appear less as goddess and more as proud mentor. You always were my best student, Diana. Very well. The Olympians will not interfere with your work here. We will maintain the pact, observe from our dimension, and trust your judgment. But know this, you are always welcome to return to Themyscira. Always. When you grow weary, when the centuries wait upon you, when you need refuge, come home. I will, Diana promised, but not yet. I have work to do. Athena vanished, her departure generating subspace ripples that Data would spend weeks analyzing. Diana stood alone in her quarters, looking out at the stars visible through DS9's windows, stars she had never seen from ancient Themyscira, stars representing civilizations and conflicts, and hopes she could barely begin to understand. She had lived 3,000 years. She had fought in wars most of history forgot. She had protected humanity through its darkest hours and celebrated its greatest achievements. And now, in the 24th century, aboard a space station at the edge of a mysterious wormhole, she was beginning again. The galaxy needed heroes, not saviors, not gods, but people willing to stand for what was right, even when standing was difficult. Diana of Themyscira intended to stand for as long as necessary. The following excerpt is taken from Captain Jean-Luc Picard's personal logs, included with his permission. Diana of Themyscira has been in our time for 6 weeks. In that brief period, she has prevented a war, established diplomatic relations with the Federation, and forced us to question assumptions we've held for generations. I find myself profoundly conflicted. Diana embodies virtues the Federation claims to champion: compassion, courage, commitment to protecting the innocent. She acts on principles we espouse but sometimes fail to implement. When she saved those Bajoran colonies, she did what many Starfleet officers wished we could do but couldn't because of regulations, diplomacy, and prime directive considerations. Yet I remain troubled by the implications of her presence. We have built a civilization on the principle that no individual should possess unaccountable power. We distribute authority through institutions, create checks and balances, require transparency and oversight. These mechanisms are imperfect, sometimes frustratingly so. They allow bad things to happen while we debate proper responses. But they also prevent good intentions from becoming tyranny. Diana operates outside these constraints. She possesses power to reshape conflicts through personal judgment. She's thoughtful, ethical, experienced, but she's still one person making decisions that affect billions. We've created treaty framework, accountability mechanisms, communication protocols. But ultimately, if Diana decides that Federation decisions are wrong, there is little we can practically do to stop her from overriding those decisions. This creates uncomfortable truth. We trust Diana because she has demonstrated trustworthiness, but trust based on demonstrated virtue is different from trust based on institutional accountability. One depends on individual character, which can change. The other depends on structural limitations, which persist regardless of individual virtue. Perhaps the real test of the Federation's principles is whether we can work with Diana, someone who challenges our institutional structures without abandoning those structures ourselves. Can we be inspired by her virtue while maintaining our commitment to distributed power? Can we learn from her moral clarity while keeping our deliberative processes? I believe we can, but it will require wisdom, humility, and constant vigilance. Diana told me she has fought for 3,000 years. I'm beginning to understand that her greatest battle isn't against Ares or any external enemy. It's the internal battle to maintain moral clarity across millennia, to remain compassionate without becoming paternalistic, to help without controlling. If the Federation can maintain our principles while working alongside Diana, perhaps we'll prove that institutions and individuals can complement rather than undermine each other. That distributed power and concentrated virtue can coexist. That would be a victory worth achieving. Conclusion: Diana of Themyscira's integration into 24th century Federation space represents unprecedented opportunity and unprecedented risk. She provides strategic capabilities, moral inspiration, and unique perspective on human development across millennia. She also represents concentration of power that challenges fundamental Federation values and creates dependencies that could prove catastrophic if she were removed. Recommendation: continue implementation of Themysciran Accord while developing institutional capabilities to address threats Diana currently handles. The goal should be partnership that strengthens both parties rather than dependency that weakens Federation autonomous capacity. The true measure of success will be whether the Federation 100 years from now is stronger because Diana was here, or weaker because we forgot how to be strong ourselves.